Chapter 1527. If that Dragon City flying general could die on the battlefield, he would have no regrets even if he could not be conferred the title of Marquis. However, he eventually lost his way, leaving behind a legacy of regret. To Li Qingshan, what he feared the most was not being able to find the battlefield, letting down that promise and himself. So, if Spirit Venerable wants to scare me with dying a horrible death, then call it beating a dog with meat buns. Pooey. Anyway, that's what I mean. I must go to the ultimate ruins even if I die. Spirit Venerable Guihai was moved, but he quickly regained his deep calmness. Human. He seemed to be silently savoring the word. He suddenly asked, "Have you heard of Goddess Hua?" Li Qingshan asked curiously, "Frog Goddess? A toad that became a spirit?" Also known as Empress Hua. Spirit Venerable Guihai was slightly relieved. If he knew about Nuwa, he would definitely not say such insulting words. It seemed like those two lines were a coincidence. It was probably a rumor. Demon Toad Emperor? Wait, don't tell me you're talking about Nuwa. Li Qingshan was very displeased. This old bastard really looked down on him. He had just read a few lousy books. With his cultural background, how could he not have heard of Nuwa? So you do know. Spirit Venerable Guihai's expression was solemn. Li Qingshan was furious. Who doesn't know about Nuwa mending the heavens? Oh right, there's also Nuwa creating humans. Spirit Venerable Guihai's expression changed. He wanted to cover his mouth, but it was too late. It was earth-shattering. With a loud rumble, a bolt of lightning penetrated Myriad Phenomenon City's defensive array. A corner of the eaves in the middle of the sky collapsed. Boom, boom, boom. More than 10 eaves were destroyed. Many rubble fell on the square. The people who were celebrating the ceremony were in chaos. They were all stunned. Everyone looked up at the sky. What happened? Was there an enemy invasion? But in the entire human world, which sect dared to provoke the Myriad Phenomenon sect? Li Qingshan was dumbfounded. The power of this heavenly lightning was so great that it was simply unheard of. The one that was struck was the eve that was closest to him. This lightning is not going to strike me, is it? He swallowed his saliva and steadied his mind. Shut up. Spirit Venerable Guihai's eyes flashed. He had lived for so long, but he had never seen someone who was so good at courting death. Li Qingshan's tongue was frozen, and he didn't manage to say the last word, human. No matter how heartless he was, he could sense that he had touched upon something incredible. He even told you about such ancient matters? Spirit Venerable Guihai let out a long sigh. This is the greatest secret of the cultivation Tao. Those who speak of it will be punished by the heavens. Fortunately, we're in the mortal realm, and the will of heaven is almost non-existent. If we were in other places, it would be difficult to protect this heaven. Li Qingshan shivered. The sky was the core of the entire Myriad Phenomenon City. In terms of defensive power, even 10 roaring thunder cloud formations stacked together couldn't compare. If the sky was destroyed, he would not be able to escape death. Could this be the legendary shielding phrase? This method of harmonizing was too ruthless. Direct human annihilation. Fortunately, when he was copying novels in the 9 provinces, he didn't randomly make up myths and legends. Generally speaking, only the truth needed to be concealed. He chewed on the ice and whispered, "Are you saying that humans aren't transformed from monkeys?" He hurriedly looked outside. The sky was clear and cloudless. There was no lightning striking down. What nonsense are you talking about? Humans are born from heaven and earth. How can they be transformed from monkeys? Apes and monkeys. Because they are the closest to human form, cultivation is the easiest. As long as all different species cultivate well, they will transform into human form. Therefore, humans are the spirit of all living things. Spirit Venerable Guihai revealed a trace of unconcealable mockery, as if humans were the spirit of all living things. What was a spirit turtle? What was a phoenix? Li Qingshan came to a realization and slapped his thigh. This is called mainstream values? Yes, mainstream. Then, are there any other shielding phrases? I'm afraid of me. Li Qingshan was a little flustered and a little angry. He loved to spout nonsense. If he was not allowed to speak nonsense, it would be more painful than death. If lightning suddenly struck down from the sky while he was speaking, he would be too unlucky. Shielding phrases? Spirit Venerable Guihai immediately knew what he meant. He said with slight surprise, "You really know how to create phrases? As far as I know, this is the only one. However, some names can't be spoken carelessly. Be careful of your divine eyes." Then I'm relieved. What? Ever since Li Qingshan transmigrated, he had a doubt. This world and his previous life were linked in countless ways. For example, the 100 schools of thought and the 9 provinces. From the looks of it, the myth of Nuwa creating humans was real. He wondered why. Was it really just a dream? He shook his head. He would probably have to go beyond the 9 heavens and meet Brother Ox before he could ask about it. "Hey, I'm asking about the sinkhole. Why are you telling me about Goddess Nuwa?" The sinkhole was transformed from my race's ancestor, the primordial spirit turtle. Li Qingshan suddenly recalled all the descriptions of Nuwa mending the heavens in his previous life. In ancient times, the 4 poles were crippled, the 9 provinces were split, the heavens could not be overturned, the earth could not be contained, the fire scorpion could not be extinguished, the water was vast, the ferocious beasts ate the people, and the raven birds captured the old and the weak. Therefore, Nuwa refined the 5-colored stone to mend the heavens, broke her turtles to establish the 4 poles, killed the black dragon to save G province, and accumulated the ashes of the reed to stop. One of the most important steps was to break her turtles to establish the 4 poles. The turtles were the big turtles. Compared to the black dragon, they seemed to be the villains. In the battle of mending the heavens, the soaring serpent turned to ashes and the divine turtle was killed. Nuwa turned the turtle shell into the sinkhole to collect all the water in the world. This is the origin of all water to sinkhole. The battle of mending the heavens. Li Qingshan was fascinated. Who did she fight? It can't be that unlucky primordial spirit turtle of yours, right? It sounded like he was not qualified. Spirit Venerable Guihai was silent for a moment. "This has nothing to do with the sinkhole." Li Qingshan asked curiously, "Aren't the spirit turtles the best at divination and self-preservation? How did they end up like this? Did they miscalculate something?" The primordial spirit turtle is different from you humans. It is truly born of the heavens and earth, so its consciousness is immortal. It rejects all foreign objects except for the spirit turtle, especially humans. Li Qingshan said, "So I'm seeking my own death by going to the sinkhole." Since the myth of Nuwa creating humans was true, then she was the great mother of humans. No matter how much the flood flowed, it would not hurt her at all. It must have been to save the Zhuan Min, or the foolish and kind commoners. So it was natural for the primordial spirit turtle to hate humans. He had to take the blame. But the feeling of being viewed as an enemy by a world was probably not good. Then wouldn't it be fine if I turned into a spirit turtle? Li Qingshan moved his elbows and imitated a turtle swimming. Spirit Venerable Guihai choked. "Your despicable and shameless appearance is indeed worthy of being an elite among humans." Li Qingshan laughed. "Thank you for the compliment. However, you can't hide your human nature in front of the primordial spirit turtle." "Maybe I can, maybe I can't, but I have to try. Tell me how to get there, or I'll keep shouting those words until the sky explodes." Chapter 1528. Fine, since you want to seek death, I'll fulfill your wish. Spirit Venerable Guihai finally mentioned the method to enter the sinkhole, but he did not mention how to exist in the sinkhole. Li Qingshan stopped being arrogant and listened quietly. He bowed deeply in the end and said, "Thank you, spiritual master, for helping me." Then he smiled suddenly. "This is such a big chessboard, can I really jump out and escape from it?" He did not have much of a relationship with Spirit Venerable Guihai, so why would he waste his breath to persuade him? If he really didn't want him to go to the ultimate, why would he tell him the method? He didn't think he could really threaten a spirit immortal. Who was the person behind Spirit Venerable Guihai? The spirit sovereign of the seas was left speechless. Only after quite a while did he say, "The Spirit Turtle clan is the official historian of the world, so it's obviously impossible for them to remain uninvolved." Heaven and Earth Scribe. To write history for heaven and earth, to write biographies for immortals and Buddhas. Search for all unanswered truths and pass on all forgotten secrets, including those that no one asks about anymore. Li Qingshan widened his eyes as he looked at Spirit Sovereign Gehai in amazement. This was the first time he had seen something proud on that indifferent face. Is this why the Spirit Turtle clan exists? Meaning? No, those are the lowly thoughts of humans. As we are not a creation of nature, we are born without meaning. That's why we desperately seek meaning. Therefore, you are not a spirit turtle. Spirit Sovereign Gehai slowly pressed his hand to his chest. This is our nature. Li Qingshan came to a sudden realization. Inferring these innate gods from a human's point of view was really wrong. They were born with knowledge and temperament, and they would never be confused by their own definition. Therefore, there was no need to seek any meaning, nor was there a need to make a choice among the many meanings. All one had to do was follow the trajectory of fate and naturally go from life to death. Of course, there would be less struggle and pain. This was such a fortunate thing. In comparison, not only were humans lacking in strength, but they were also almost mentally disabled. Although ordinary demons did not have such a powerful bloodline inheritance, it was a connate item. Therefore, there wouldn't be any messy inner demons. It was nothing more than hunting and escaping, strength and weakness, survival and death. Only humans, these little monsters made out of mud by Goddess Nuwa. Only an inferior figurine made out of interest would be so weak. Li Qingshan bowed deeply again. Thank you, Senior. I was even more convinced of my idea that no one lived for the sake of living. Goddess Nuwa didn't give humans any meaning to live. Perhaps she wanted us to find it ourselves. He turned around and left. The spirit sovereign of the seas Gehai watched Li Qingshan's figure disappear into the distance. He suddenly stopped, nodded his head and said with a smile, "Oh right, please leave enough space for me in the history of heaven and earth. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you." Ha! He laughed and went downstairs, chanting in a slow voice, "Once the bitter encounter begins, the stars fall from the battlefield. Shattering mountains and rivers? Shattering mountains and rivers? Forget it. Who hasn't died since ancient times? Leaving behind a loyal heart that shines in the pages of history. Good poem, good poem." Spirit Venerable Guehai's heart trembled. Let's fight to the death. He did not read the sorrow and hatred of the original poem. Instead, he read a murderous aura. Buddhists used Buddha's words as sutras. It was comparable to his cultivation technique. And there were only two kinds of stars. One was the trichiliocosm, and the other was the 9 heavens immortals and Buddhas. The poem could express one's will, whether it was intentional or not. Time passed, the full moon waned. Life was like a mayfly in the boundless sea. Looking down from high in the sky, one could see through the thick thunderclouds. Across the turbulent sea surface, a mayfly slowly swam in the deep sea. But if one were to personally enter the deep sea, one would be shocked to discover that the mayfly was 100,000 feet long. It was shaped like a salamander and had feather patterns on its body. With a flick of its long tail, it suddenly leaped out of the water and swallowed the lobster demon king that was transcending the tribulation. Then, it soared into the sea. It stirred up huge waves. The tribulation lightning that filled the sky came crashing down. Most of it was attracted by the human-shaped lightning rod on its head. The rest only left faint marks on its massive body. The thunderclouds in the sky quickly dissipated. The human-shaped lightning rod asked, "Was it delicious?" "Extremely delicious. Why didn't you leave some for me?" "You're just a clone, what's the point of eating it? Can't I have a taste?" This was one of the 6 paths of reincarnation, the monster beast path, also known as the animal path. The sky was high and the sea was wide. The mountains were deep and the forests were dense. It was the paradise of all monsters. A paradise where the strong preyed on the weak and the fittest survived. The endless hunt and escape, survival and death, formed the ultimate melody of freedom and freedom, thousands of beasts without restraint. Apart from natural communities and loose alliances, there were no human cities or cultivation sections. It wasn't just because of the differences in species and the fact that their intelligence was generally lower than humans. The great demons with extremely high spiritual intelligence were also more inclined to dominate an area. This was the will of the monster-beast path. It followed the nature of all living things. If anyone tried to establish a big alliance here, they would quickly find that their cultivation level couldn't advance, and their luck would become worse and worse. Even for a sect as loose as the Wanxiang sect, there was already strict discipline here. Thus, there was no guarantee of safety. Even a monster king that was about to transcend the tribulation could only obediently accept his fate if he encountered a powerful hunter. As a result, many monsters chose to cooperate with humans and become mounts, breaking away from this overly free environment. A disciple of the Myriad Phenomenon sect would never be swallowed by a monster during his tribulation. This was the benefit of having an organization. However, there were also many human cultivators who did the opposite. They were willing to risk being hunted and return to the beautiful nature. For example, this mayfly monster. Li Qingshan spread his arms and took a deep breath. The splashing waves landed on his cheeks along with the sea breeze. Ah, how beautiful! He patted the big Kuan beneath him. Yenying, do you suddenly feel the urge to mate? Sure. Come. Gu Yenying's eyes swiveled as she smiled. She swayed her tail gently and went deep into the sea. Li Qingshan sized up her mountain-like body and asked, "Can you transform into a human?" "I can't," Gu Yenying answered straightforwardly. "Then forget it." Li Qingshan also gave up immediately. Gu Yenying asked, "Just what are you doing here?" "Inspecting work and experiencing life." "Are you done inspecting?" Li Qingshan nodded. "Yes, I'm relieved to see that you're so free." After all these years of cultivation, Gu Yenying had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations. Although her bloodline was half human and half demon, she still had the heart of an eagle and pursued endless freedom. Especially after fusing with the feathers of chaotic heaven, she completely abandoned her human bloodline and became a natural deity, the Kunpeng, similar to the spirit turtle and phoenix. Out of all the races, she was probably the most compatible with the demonic path. There was no need to seek any meaning. Freedom was fate and fate was freedom. Freedom was born and freedom was death. Even Li Qingshan was rather envious. If his main body came to the demonic path, he could probably become a child of destiny, but he definitely could not compare to her. Moreover, that kind of destiny was instead a kind of restraint for him. That was because in the hearts of people, there would always be a battle between gods and demons. Whether it was the ox demon's stubbornness, the tiger demon's fury, the phoenix's pride, the spirit turtle's schemes, or the Qilint's benevolence, they were all an obstacle to freedom. Only the ape demon's heart was closest to freedom, but it was too close to obsession. He had read all the heavens in the heavenly court. There was only the heavens of freedom and the heavens of nature, but not a single heavens of freedom. This was a congenital deficiency that could not be made up for later. He also yearned for freedom, but it was not just for freedom. But it did not matter. It was not bad to see her obtain freedom. Li Qingshan smiled. "I hope to see your heroic rise to the top soon." "I won't be too far behind you." Li Qingshan stretched. His figure melted into the sea current, like the moon in the water. Although the vastness of the ocean here far surpassed the human realm, it was still different from Ruin's End. Ruin's End was not an ocean, so it was probably useless no matter how much he experienced it. In the blink of an eye, a blood-red sky and a blood-red land unfolded before his eyes. Luo Ho Xiaoming held a huge sword that he had picked up casually and stood on the corpse-strewn battlefield. He looked at him and asked the same question, "What are you doing here?" Li Qingshan said in grief and indignation, "Is there no one to welcome me? I was the one who helped you deal with the teleportation formation after all." Luo Ho Xiaoming threw down the huge sword. "Heh, if your main body came here, I would be able to properly welcome you. Heh, aren't you afraid that your mom will call your house for dinner?" Chapter 1529. Luo Ho Xiaoming's face darkened. His expression was ferocious, but he had the majesty of a deity. He was not the so-called child of destiny. He was originally from the Azura celestial tribe, and he shared the same fate as the Azura path. Ever since he returned to the Azura path, his power had been increasing day by day. He only needed time to return to his godhood. However, even a deity had a reverse scale. He suddenly struck out with his palm, and the boulder Li Qingshan was sitting on exploded. A cloud of dust rose into the sky. There is no mother and son on the battlefield. His voice was resolute, but it sounded tired. This is your inner demon. If you don't get rid of it, you may not have the chance to reunite with her on the battlefield. Li Qingshan's voice came from the dust. The first few heavenly tribulations did not pose any threat to Luo Ho Xiaoming. However, the closer he got to the position of a deity, the more dangerous the situation became. The tribulation thunder and demon barrier did not know any acquaintances. The stronger one was, the greater the test one had to endure. Any flaw in one's heart could be exploited by the demon, and the result would be devastating. Luo Ho Xiaoming's ferocious expression returned to normal, and a hint of sadness appeared on his face. That is also my fate. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Oh right, have you heard of Nuwa? Nuwa? Luo Ho Xiaoming frowned. Who is that? Li Qingshan felt even more deeply that this was indeed a big secret. Even the former deities did not know of Nuwa. Then have you heard of the battle of patching the heavens? I have. Luo Ho Xiaoming pointed at his head. In the Rahu clan's inherited memory, it is the oldest battle. However, it was too long ago. At that time, even the 6 paths of reincarnation did not exist. It is only a legend that cannot be verified. If the Nuwa you speak of really exists, where is she now? What if the legend is true? How do you know? Luo Ho Xiaoming asked curiously. You are a country bumpkin. How do you know such ancient things? Don't tell me you made it up. Li Qingshan pointed at his head. Memory inheritance. Luo Ho Xiaoming smiled and crossed his arms. Remember, you were just a mortal. Li Qingshan opened his arms. How many people in the Azura realm were originally mortals? Except for Rahu and Jidu, all of them. Where did Rahu and Jidu come from? This should be a branch of the ancient god fiends. Where did the ancient fiend god come from? Naturally, it was born of the heavens and earth. Gods and demons are also humans, and humans are not born from heaven and earth. When the heavens and earth were born, everything was so new, and many things had no names, and it was necessary to point at them. The concepts of gods, demons, and humans did not exist at all. They were all just a figment of the imagination of later generations. These ancient memories. Probably only the Spirit Turtle clan possessed the legacy, and only Ruin's End could preserve it. When Nuwa created humans, she did not use any gods or demons as a template. However, when she first created the human, she was very excited and meticulously molded it with yellow mud. Later, she found it troublesome. So she covered the mud with withered vines and casually sprinkled them into mud spots. What was molded from the yellow mud was the so-called God. What was sprinkled from the mud was the so-called human. The two were essentially no different. Powerful leaders led the tribe and overcame the thorns and thorns on the earth to reproduce. These were all historical stories that he had obtained from Spirit Sovereign Guihai over the years by using the novels contributed by the 5 continents world. It made his understanding of the 9 transformations of demons and gods deeper, and his cultivation also increased. At this level, knowledge was power. What nonsense are you talking about? Luo Ho Xiaoming raised his eyebrows, finding it unbelievable. The Ra clan was a Khanate god. Even ordinary Azura could not be compared to them, so how could they coexist with humans? Li Qingshan said, this is the historical records of the Spirit Turtle clan. Even if what you said is true, where did that person come from? Li Qingshan grabbed a handful of mud with his left hand and pinched a small person. This is you. He also grabbed a handful of mud with his right hand and sprinkled it, turning it into a small person on the ground. He casually picked one up. This is me. Luo Ho Xiaoming took a look. The two small people were abnormally ugly. They only had a blurry human shape, but his was barely considered exquisite. You mean that Niuhua created? Li Qingshan hurriedly interrupted. Shut up. Don't speak nonsense, you will be struck by lightning. Luo Ho Xiaoming smiled and said, This story of yours is too ridiculous. If it was in the heavenly Tao, it would be enough for them to execute you 100 times. Humans were the spirit of all living things. Celestials were naturally superior to humans, spirits among spirits. Now, it was said that they were not born of heaven and earth, but puppet-like creations. They were even inferior to ordinary birds and beasts, so how could those arrogant celestials stand it? Li Qingshan said seriously, Then do you know why Niuhua perished in my inherited memories? In order to save the common people, these lowly and pitiful creations. There are gods and demons? Li Qingshan crushed the two clay figurines together and scattered them with the wind. Dust to dust, dirt to dirt. This was not what Spirit Venerable Guihai had told him, but the outcome of the heaven-mending battle in his previous life's memories. In the blood-red clouds on the horizon, there was a radiant sun, like a flowing golden ball wrapped in ancient lava. On the other side, there was a cold and white moon like pig iron. However, it was unknown who went down and who came up. At that moment, Yi's body, which had exhausted all its strength, lay down in the middle and stopped breathing. This was the record of a novelist in his previous life. This was probably something that the primordial spirit turtle had not expected. No matter how magical and profound its divination abilities were, it could not have predicted that the Great Mother, who coexisted with heaven and earth, would be willing to sacrifice herself for these puppets made of mud. Therefore, it could not escape the fate of being killed by her. Li Qingshan's expression was a little sad. Isn't it a matter of course for the mother of mankind to sacrifice herself for mankind? Luo Ho Xiaoming pondered for a long time, then cupped his fists and bowed. I understand. He smiled brightly, sweeping away the haze between his brows. From today onwards, Niuhua is my mother. As for those meaningless fetters, I will personally cut them off. Once the knot in his heart was removed, his breath showed signs of breaking through in an instant, but he gently suppressed it. Li Qingshan bowed slightly. This is what I should do. After the training of the great demon king, one of the 4 heavenly kings, Xiaoming Heavenly King, finally made up his mind to kill his own mother. What a terrifying story. Luo Ho Xiaoming said again, By the way, I want you to know that I am not worried about being discovered. Deities are not omniscient or omnipotent. But as far as I know, all deities have an almost instinctive prophecy ability. Li Qingshan did not hate to fight as a chess piece, but if whatever he did was within the expectations of those deities, it would be too bad. Theoretically, yes, but in reality, it is impossible. Firstly, it is hard to predict a person's mind. When the number reaches billions, it will become a huge variable. Secondly, how can a deity guess the thoughts of another deity? When their thoughts diverge, their fates start to become chaotic, and they cannot ignore each other's existence, even if they are at the ends of the earth. The greater the divergence, the deeper the chaos, and it becomes a mess. I see, then I am relieved. I have been burned by the karmic fire, and it is already a new beginning. My bloodline has been severed, and my fate has been completely changed. But the reason why I dare to come back is actually because of you. You should know that you are entangled with a chaotic and changeable fate. You are born from the calamity, and I suspect that even the Buddha cannot completely grasp it. Now that I am facing the calamity with you, who can control my whereabouts? I understand now, so it is because of my own interference. By the way, what calamity? Heaven and earth killing calamity. What do you mean? I don't know, it has always been called that. Alright. Chapter 1530. Li Qingshan also asked about Spirit Venerable Guihai, but that old bastard refused to answer no matter what. After spending so many years together, they could be said to be on friendly terms. Li Qingshan was too embarrassed to threaten him again. Of course, the main reason was that threats were useless. The answer to the question had to be found by oneself. When can you go through the sixth tribulation? So, after breaking the knot in his heart, Luo Ho Xiaoming became even more spirited. Looking at the Azura path, this was his territory, his home. He opened his fingers and grabbed into the distance, then suddenly clenched. I will take back what I lost. Fight, little Ming. Li Qingshan raised his arms and shouted. Luo Ho Xiaoming sighed, feeling that something was wrong. Can you call me Ming? How much do you like the word little? Ming? How can you think of that? What kind of third-rate romance is this? Ha! Li Qingshan laughed at his taste. Luo Ho Xiaoming gritted his teeth. Then call me Luo Xiaoming. Okay, little Ming. Goodbye, little Ming. Without saying anything, Luo Ho Xiaoming slashed with his palm. With a loud bang, a deep ravine appeared on the ground, but it hit nothing. Li Qingshan's figure gradually faded, like the moon in the water. He smiled and waved his hand. I won't play with you anymore, I have to focus on the war. Tell me if you need help. No need, it's just some boring small battles. I'm afraid you'll be bored. Li Qingshan closed his eyes, then opened them. Under a pale crescent moon, a mountain stood tall, a lonely city seemed to pierce through the sky. The war had lasted for half the night, and the enemy was still stubbornly resisting. But this was not the battlefield of the demon realm. Since the battle with Tao Wu, Black Cloud City had entered an unprecedented peace. The monks of the Pure Land School had pushed the Pure Land of the mortal realm to Cold Blood Pass, without a single guard. If they wanted to advance, they could completely occupy Cold Blood Pass and replace Black Cloud City. But after thinking about it, he decided to give up on the idea. The human realm had always focused on defense against the infernal realm. Under such circumstances, they gave up on the more dangerous Black Cloud City. Venturing deep into the infernal domain's borders was not a good thing. After all, the bird that sticks out will be shot. Thus, he ordered his soldiers to attack Lingxue Pass and the canyon behind. They carried out the most thorough destruction, as much as possible to block the possibility of the infernal domain attacking. As he had hoped, the infernal domain had been peaceful for many years and seemed to have completely given up on attacking this area. He suspected that something had played a role in it, perhaps Qiongqi. Unknowingly, he had already formed a grudge with the two gods. He was still alive and kicking. He had been dreaming of a river of blood lately. It meandered for tens of thousands of miles, as if it had passed through time, flowing all the way from the primordial era to the present. Legend has it that the river Styx was the first river at the beginning of the world. Its flow defined time and formed fate. Even a god would not be able to renege on an oath made to it. Every time he dreamt, he would get closer to it. Recently, he could already see the tumbling waves of the river of blood. Thus, he understood that on the day of the final battle with Qiongqi, it was getting closer and closer. The trip to the infernal domain was a must. Many people envied him for his stable life as the eldest apprentice brother, but they did not know that war had never changed. The aura of death filled the world. A deep sense of hunger was like a hole or a ball of fire. He could not help but lick his lips. Little and handed over her tender arm. Do you want to eat? Just now, someone asked me what was the point of having a clone eat. My little and is still the most considerate. Sigh, I'm so hungry. The wind whistled past his ears. A huge dragon flew in the sky. This was the dragon corpse left behind by the previous eldest apprentice brother Lin Xian. After being purified by the 3 burial robe, it had been reactivated. Its golden scales had faded into a silvery white color, and under the moonlight, it was like a silver ribbon. Li Qingshan held little and in his arms and stood on the dragon's head. The night wind blew against his face between the dragon's horns. There were millions of corpse soldiers and ghost soldiers below. They were like mountains and seas as they attacked the city in waves. More than 10 corpse emperors and ghost emperors were gathered in the crumbling city, discussing countermeasures in panic. They were originally the rulers of this land, and in order to avoid killing each other, they each had their own territory. But now, they had no choice but to gather together to resist the powerful enemy. Because in this area, all the corpse emperors and ghost emperors who did not do so had either died or defected to the enemy. In their view, there was no difference between the two, and the latter was even worse. But now, they suddenly discovered that it was useless even if they joined forces. The corpse ghost army under their command was far larger than the enemy, but under the waves of attacks, they could not withstand a single blow and were already on the verge of collapse. A corpse emperor roared, "Impossible! How can low-level corpse ghosts have such discipline?" Unless they invaded other worlds, the hungry ghost realm rarely had large-scale wars. Occasionally, there would be a few, but they were basically all swarms, like a group fight. Because undead were different from living beings, they were innately unsuited for war. Corpses moved slowly and had low intelligence, while ghosts moved erratically and had chaotic minds. They were basically a bunch of mentally handicapped and mentally ill people. Under the drive of hunger, they only had a strong desire to devour. The corpse emperors and ghost emperors could use their corpse control techniques and ghost controlling techniques to use them as cannon fodder, but they were unable to organize them into a true army. And now, these corpse ghosts attacking the city were completely disciplined and obeyed all orders. The most inconceivable thing was that they could actually condense military chi. Ordinary corpse ghost armies could also gather their chi to strengthen their commander. It looked a little similar to military chi, but it was essentially just yin chi. It was already very difficult to restrain the corpse ghosts' desire to devour each other. It was simply wishful thinking to want them to unite and gather military chi. But this kind of impossible thing was happening right in front of their eyes. The mountain of corpses and the sea of ghosts continued to approach. Li Qingshan shook his head. "Teach, these guys don't understand the art of war at all." His crimson eyes shone brightly in the darkness, demonic and full of deterrence. The roar tiger demonic eyes was one of the tiger demon's divine abilities. It could intimidate opponents in battle, but it was basically useless against extremely powerful enemies. This somewhat useless innate divine ability had played a very miraculous role in the war against the hungry ghost realm. This was because it could intimidate weak existences, distort and solidify their minds, and cause them to completely submit to the tiger demon, turning them into hungry ghosts. Low-level corpse ghosts had low intelligence and chaotic minds, so it was very easy for them to turn into hungry ghosts. This was completely different from the corpse control techniques and ghost controlling techniques. Hungry ghosts didn't need to be controlled, and they could wholeheartedly serve the tiger demon. In an instant, they became the most loyal and brave soldiers. Their minds were no longer paralyzed, and their minds were no longer chaotic. They sacrificed themselves for the greater good, wholeheartedly serving the tiger demon. Li Qingshan cracked his neck. "It's time to give them the final blow." A ghost emperor shouted, "Don't you know whose subordinates we are?" Chapter 1531. Li Qingshan shrugged disapprovingly. Little and smiled faintly. He was not the child of destiny of the hungry ghost realm. Instead, his luck here was extremely bad, and he could be called the child of misfortune. If they hadn't done a thorough investigation, why would they have started a war? From the moment he opened the gate of hungry ghosts to the very beginning, he was almost discovered by ghost immortals and corpse immortals passing by. Perhaps it was because of the white bone bodhisattva, but it was more likely that the white bone path of great beauty was fighting with the hungry ghost path for food. Being burned by the samadhi flames of white bone was different from being devoured by other ghouls. Instead, it was being completely purified. Even the weak wills of ordinary small worlds had instincts to maintain their own existence. The ascension heavenly tribulation would become extremely difficult, not to mention the hungry ghost path which focused on hunger and devouring. It had always been the one eating others. There was no reason for others to eat it. Therefore, making a living in the hungry ghost realm was truly not an easy task. Even though Little and had already digested the results of the battle in the fiend realm and had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations, it was still impossible for him to fight ghost immortal and corpse immortal head-on. In the entire 6 paths of reincarnation, ghost immortals and corpse immortals were the ones who had survived 6 heavenly tribulations. Their numbers were even higher than the sum of the other deaths. The 6th heavenly tribulation was a threshold. Many human immortals and Yao immortals would choose to traverse the 9 heavens in order to increase their chances of becoming a true immortal. More importantly, be it human immortals or Yao immortals, their lifespans were limited. The Book of Life and Death recorded their lives. If he could not overcome 7 heavenly tribulations to become a true immortal, he would have to die. In that case, he would have to make a trip to the Yama Palace and be obedient and reincarnate. Although there would be certain preferential treatment, such as not having to drink the water of the river of forgetfulness and forgetting the memories of their previous lives, it was said that they could even bargain with the 10 kings of hell and choose the environment in which they reincarnated, be it the aristocracy or the royal family, or even human or beast, male or female. However, recultivating was destined to be an extremely dangerous thing. The amount of information a baby could carry was limited, and it was impossible to inject all of his memories into it, let alone an unformed fetus. She would definitely have to go through the mystery of the womb. She had no means of protecting herself at all. Even if he was a member of the royal family, he was no match for a cup of poisoned wine. If he was not careful, he would die in the womb. No matter how many backup plans he had prepared, he would not be able to overcome all the dangers. After getting through the mystery in the womb, there was still a question in front of her. Are you still you? Now, Li Qingshan clearly understood that the Chu Tian he saw all those years ago, even if it was the Chu Tian who had awakened his memories, it was impossible for him to be the real Lin Xian. This was because the original eldest senior brother Lin Xian had a yang spirit cultivation, and a foundation establishment cultivator could not carry his lifetime of memories. At most, he could only retain some memory fragments, and the main content was still a few scrolls. He was not a weaker version of Lin Xian, but rather a stronger version of Chu Tian. In the end, he was afraid of losing face because of his resentment. He had walked into a land of death. As for the senior martial brother of the Myriad Nature sect, who oversaw Black Cloud City and killed a demon emperor, he was definitely not someone like that. In this sense, you only have one life. If one did not become a true immortal, one would eventually turn to dust. Therefore, countless human immortals and demon immortals rejected the wheel of reincarnation. There were only 2 paths they could take. One was to join the fiendish domain and become an evil god. The other was to enter the hungry ghost realm and become a ghost immortal or corpse immortal. And to become an evil god, they had to distort their nature, and they had to be commanded by the 12 demon gods to conquer the human realm and fight against the desireless heavenly palace. If they were not careful, they would be killed by a true immortal and be doomed eternally. The hungry ghost realm became the best choice, which led to the current situation. But for Li Qingshan and Little End, this was the biggest benefit. Aside from ghost immortals and corpse immortals, they were the top hunters. Ordinary corpse emperors and ghost emperors could be eaten like vegetables. Even 10 of them together would not be a match for them. And the hungry ghost realm was extremely vast, no matter how many ghost immortals and corpse immortals there were. It could not be that ghost immortals were everywhere and corpse immortals were as numerous as dogs, or that they each ruled over a region and had their own sphere of influence. In the end, the hungry ghost realm only had a will and no consciousness. It could not directly tell a certain ghost immortal, "There's a white-boned successor hiding here. Go kill her for me." At most, it could make him suddenly want to go out for a walk, and there had to be a sufficient reason. There is no door to fortune or misfortune, only man brings it. Whether it was good or bad luck, it could only be triggered by some kind of opportunity. It was born from within and felt from without. And up until now, Little and had not used the Samadhi flames of white bone. It was to prevent this kind of opportunity. Otherwise, it would be much easier to break through Wuhua City. She had to do her best to avoid conflict with any ghost immortals or corpse immortals. Once everyone knew about it, all her previous efforts would be wasted. But fortunately, as long as she lay down in the pile of bones, she would be no different from an ordinary set of white bones. Even ghost immortals and corpse immortals would not be able to detect her. She and Li Qingshan had gone through a detailed, social investigation and gained a full understanding of the hungry ghost realm. They made a lot of preparations before choosing this Wu Hua Ghost Immortals territory to start building a base. That old ghost had a good habit. It slept for 100 years and was awake for 100 years. For an existence that was close to eternal life, time had little meaning. Even cultivation was meaningless. No one could become a true immortal in the hungry ghost realm. Perhaps there had been, but how could the order of the 6 paths of reincarnation be blasphemed? The 9 heavens were not that kind. Such a heaven-defying action would definitely incur the wrath of the heavens. Therefore, there was only one word to describe it. Many ghost immortals and corpse immortals had the habit of sleeping, similar to mortals. They used sleep to rest and recover, thereby reducing their consumption and maintaining their own existence. It also prevented them from falling into madness in the endless emptiness. This old ghost only slept with a special pattern. Although this city was called Wu Hua City, the Wu Hua ghost immortal's sleeping place was not here. It would only come when he was awake. Therefore, no matter how happy these ghost emperors and corpse emperors were, Li Qingshan was not afraid at all. Little and had sent skeleton demons to monitor the Wu Hua ghost immortal's sleeping place. Once the situation changed, he could hide himself or retreat from the human realm in time. One of the ghost emperors pretended to be confused and asked, "If you are so good at fighting, why don't you fight in the Azura realm? Why must you come here to make things difficult for us?" At the same time, he transmitted his thoughts to the other ghost emperors and corpse emperors. "I'll buy some time. Who will sound the alarm and wake up the Wu Hua ghost immortal?" The ghost emperors and corpse emperors looked at each other. The Wu Hua ghost immortal hated being woken up from his slumber the most. Moreover, every time he woke up, it would be when he was the most hungry. The entire realm has fallen, and the Wu Hua city is about to be breached. I'm sure he can understand. The alarm was set in the deepest part of the Wu Hua city, and it only needed to be pressed lightly. It would be able to sound the alarm and wake the Wu Hua ghost immortal. However, they looked at each other. None of them had the intention to do so. They felt that the possibility of dying like this was much higher than the city being breached. It was better for them to scatter like birds and beasts when the city was breached and flee to other places. Li Qingshan laughed. "Can't you see? I'm recruiting soldiers and preparing for a big battle. Stop stalling for time. If anyone dared to wake that old ghost, they would have done so long ago." He leaped up. He descended from the sky and landed on the Wu Hua city. Millions of corpse emperors looked up at him at the same time. The cold, lifeless military chi gathered on his body. His cheeks became much more sunken, and the blood on his lips faded. His skin became pale, and his bones were faintly visible. Only his eyes were still crimson like fire. Even if it was just a mirror clone. In an instant, it possessed destructive power that was no weaker than the main body. A deathly gray meteor broke through the formation and landed in the middle of the ghost emperors and corpse emperors. The death military god stood up. Boom! A wave of air spread out, and the strong wind and deathly chi swept past. Every ghost emperor and corpse emperor could not stand steadily, and their expressions changed. They had never seen such an existence in the hungry ghost realm. They did not even dare to run away, let alone attack him. The violent military chi was so strong that it was hard to control. The body of the death military god rose like fire, but it was the color of deathly gray. The death military god looked down at the ghost emperors and corpse emperors. "Submit to me or die." "Oh, I forgot. You guys are dead to begin with." Ha! No one could laugh. They only felt cold all over. "You really have no sense of humor. My time is limited." 1, 2, 3. The death military god slowly raised his huge palm. "I'm willing to submit to you, my lord." "Me too. I'm willing to follow you to conquer the world." "Very well." Li Qingshan was not surprised at all. This was not the first time he had seen such a scene. The ghost emperors and corpse emperors clearly did not have the virtue of loyalty. To them, survival was the most important thing. How ironic. At this moment, the azure dragon flew over. Its sharp claws gripped the mountain rocks and coiled around Wu Hua City. Little and sat cross-legged on the dragon's head. He was wearing a kasaya and chanting with his eyes closed. The corpse emperors and ghost emperors under Li Qingshan's command also surrounded them, sealing off all the exits. The Kasaya on Little N's body floated up like a white bird, wrapping around a corpse emperor. Li Qingshan's nightmare tiger eyes could only intimidate opponents of this level for a while, but Little N's 3-burial robe was best at purifying these dead ghosts. This was how he got his army of ghouls. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to only get the loyalty of the low-level ghouls. Without the leadership of various generals, it was impossible to gather the morale of the army. The corpse emperor's expression was ferocious, and he wanted to resist. Li Qingshan glanced at him. "You can choose to die." Although the corpse emperor did not understand what die meant, he did not dare to resist under the gaze of the huge and terrifying death military god. He obediently wrapped himself in the Kasaya. His expression changed. Sometimes he gritted his teeth, and sometimes he struggled angrily. However, his expression gradually calmed down as if all the pain had disappeared. Even the hunger that deeply tortured him disappeared completely. He became satisfied, serene, and comfortable. When he took off his Kasaya, he turned his head and looked at his colleagues who had always wanted to devour him. He seemed to have changed into a different person, and there was a trace of pity on his face. "Believe me, you must give it a try." The corpse emperors and ghost emperors all sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. They felt an unprecedented fear. However, their fear soon disappeared, and they became serene, calm, and compassionate. Only the last ghost emperor was left. He looked at Little N in shock. "Are you the white bone inheritor?" Little N opened one eye and put a finger to his lips. "Shoo. P.S. Sorry to keep everyone waiting again. I received some feedback some time ago, and I felt that these few chapters were not very clear, so I reconsidered the writing style and rhythm. Although I have my own reasons for showing off, I wrote it for others to read, so I spent some time to adjust it. It would be good if everyone was happy." Chapter 1532. Flawless City had fallen, the sovereigns had submitted, and the army had entered the city. Li Qingshan's body flickered in and out of existence, twisting and changing like a bubble. Bearing such a majestic military aura, this mirror avatar was almost at its limit. He smiled at Little N. The smile was like the moon in the water, rippling and shattering in the light before vanishing. Little N donned the 3-burial robes again and cast down the formations he had prepared beforehand, turning into a dark shadow that enveloped him. He did not seek defense, only concealment. After so many years of preparation, it was time for him to begin a new round of cultivation. With a wave of his hand, the samadhi flames of white bone incinerated the ghouls. They did not struggle or cry out, let alone resist. Even the withered faces of the zombies seemed to ease up slightly, freed from the flames. A white lotus bloomed in the sea of fire, slowly blooming. It was odorless and odorless. With a clap, Li Qingshan closed a book. His gaze became dazed. The bookshelves in the surroundings extended out, confirming that he was still in the sky. Everything that had happened in the demonic beast realm, the Azura realm, and the hungry ghost realm was far too colorful. The silent sea of books instead seemed rather surreal, like he was immersed in 3 novels of different styles. The moon reflected in the water seemed like a dream. Li Qingshan broke into laughter. There was a sense of calmness to him, as if the frivolity of his youth had faded away with the passage of time, replaced by a faint scholarly air. He was rather similar to Spirit Sovereign Gehai. He returned the book in his hand to the bookshelf. Up until now, he had already read through all the books in the sky. This was his cultivation. Since he needed to enter Ruin's End as a spirit turtle, he would do everything he could to improve the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression. If he could reach the 9th layer and unleash the perfect form of the spirit turtle transformation, he believed it would be enough to fool the will of the primordial spirit turtle. However, there would always be a gap between reality and imagination. His spirit turtle transformation had reached the 8th layer. He was stuck on the edge of the 9th layer, unable to advance any further. The path of the spirit turtle. It was not about hard work, but accumulation. Or even fortuitous encounters. He murmured to himself, Perhaps I still haven't implemented the true path of the spirit turtle. However, time waited for no one. He had to prepare to enter ruins, and no matter what. An old voice came from above. Because you still can't let go of a person's heart, this will be your fatal weakness. Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. Just how much do the spirit turtles like to peep? Sigh, how disgusting. Spirit Venerable Guihai fell silent. Over the years, he had personally witnessed Li Qingshan's strength increasing day by day. Now, he no longer had the confidence to take him down. For cultivators, especially for a god with a long lifespan like him, it was really just a blink of an eye. He let out a long sigh. This is probably the scary part about humans. This child was born in response to tribulation, and now his wings are gradually growing. Who can stop him? Li Qingshan emerged from the sky, and the bright sunlight shone on his face. He yawned comfortably and tossed all of the messy knowledge in the book to the back of his mind, as well as the principles he was talking to himself. A disciple hurried over. Eldest senior brother Lu invites you. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up, and his laziness was swept away. Lu Tian was finally going to die. Have I seen you before? Eldest senior brother, people of high status tend to have short memories. Back then, when we joined the Myriad Phenomenon sect together, we were even taught a lesson by you. I remember now. So it's you, kid. Time really passes quickly. I'll be leaving first, see you later. Take care. The disciple watched as Letian tore through the sky and disappeared among the rows of buildings. Suddenly, he shook his head and slowly walked down the stairs towards Life Chaos Place. In a quiet room deep in Life Chaos Place, there was a bamboo mat. There was a table, and a lone lamp was swaying. A pot of cigarette smoke curled up, and a crooked, Gamble character was hanging on the wall. Other than that, there was nothing else. Lu Tian was waiting there alone. He had just taken a bath and changed his clothes. His hair was still a little wet, and he looked as calm as a virgin. Until a figure appeared on the door and opened it with a whoosh. He walked in with a gust of wind and asked, "Is it the time?" Lu Tian nodded. "There's still an hour. Sit down and wait for a while." Li Qingshan felt the special atmosphere in the quiet room. His expression turned solemn, and he turned to close the door. In an instant, layers of formations were activated, and one could only leave but not enter. Today might be the end of a human sovereign, and he would fall back into the cycle of reincarnation in hell. Lu Tian continued to close his eyes and rest. However, Li Qingshan did not sit down. Instead, he paced around the room with his hands behind his back. After pacing a few rounds, he stopped in front of the only decoration. What are these words? They are written like dogs crawling. Lu Tian's eyebrows twitched a little. I thought eldest senior brother had read a lot of books and was already omniscient. Li Qingshan touched his head. I forgot after reading. If I carried so much knowledge and logic, how could I walk? Spirit Sovereign Guihai seemed to be at the top of the sky, but in reality he was carrying the sky on his back. Therefore, he could not move an inch and was trapped in the building. He did not wish to live such a life. It was probably because of this that he could not cultivate to the 9th layer of the spirit turtle transformation. However, he did not read those books for nothing. They were all copied into Little Tian in the 5 continents world. In the beginning, he needed to exchange novels. Later on, Li Qingshan no longer needed Spirit Sovereign Guihai's bookmark, so he made it completely free. Just as he hoped, he turned the 5 continents world into a beautiful new world where everyone could cultivate. Unfortunately, there were still many people who did not buy it. Lu Tian smiled. Although there are many scholars in the world, there are few who understand this logic. Senior brother, your wisdom is not something ordinary people can compare to. Li Qingshan turned back and said with a smile, no matter how much you say, I will not help you fight that oxhead. A bet is a bet. Although Oxhead Apang is only a Yin Commander Ghost Immortal, he represents the order of the 6 paths of reincarnation. You are definitely not his match. Who was the one who set the order of the 6 paths of reincarnation? Li Qingshan muttered to himself. Suddenly he asked, oh right, where's your 3-legged golden toad? It's in the cave abode. I'm preparing to pack up and return to the demonic beast realm. Heh, you sure are loyal. Our lives are entrusted to each other. There's no loyalty. If I were to fall into reincarnation, I would have to rely on him to guide me. Even if the guide succeeds, would it still be you? So what if it is? So what if it isn't? You sure are open-minded. So what if it is? So what if it isn't? If it isn't, I'll fight that ox head up hang. If I win, I'll run. If I lose, I'll just have my soul destroyed. Why bother entering reincarnation? I won't win. We'll only know after we fight. Li Qingshan's eyes burned. His youthful spirit had never been worn down. A muffled roar resounded in the quiet room. A majestic city gate appeared out of thin air. It passed through layers of formations and stood erect in the quiet room. 3 huge words were written on the city gate, Gate of Hell. With a loud bang, the gate of hell opened. Chilly winds danced wildly and ghost fog filled the air. The lone lamp was extinguished and the smoke dispersed. A huge ox head popped out from the ghost fog. Its eyes shone with red light as it stared straight at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan looked left and right. Well, it's none of my business. I was just casually saying. Oxhead said in a muffled voice, Come in. Chapter 1533. There's definitely something strange going on, but it shouldn't be directed at me. Lutian knew himself very well. He was just a gambling buddy who accompanied Apan to relieve his boredom. If Apan didn't want to gamble, he could send him to hell any time. The chilly wind caressed his face, and he felt something in his heart. Thus, he asked Li Qingshan again, Are you sure you want to come? I can come out if you lose, right? Li Qingshan looked at the gates of hell that looked like the mouth of an abyss. His heart was pounding. The look that Oxhead Apang gave him seemed to have a deeper meaning. After reaching the 8th layer of the spirit turtle transformation, his premonitions became clearer and clearer. That depends on how much lifespan you have left in the Book of Life and Death. There are millions and millions of years left. Li Qingshan had a god-fiend bloodline, and his lifespan was hundreds or thousands of times longer than that of ordinary human cultivators. Moreover, even as a young spirit cultivator, he still had a long life. With a thought, his young spirit left his body and plunged into the gate of hell. The more Li Tianyu thought about it, the more he found it strange. This eldest brother had always been brave and resolute, but he was definitely not the type to recklessly take risks. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived to this day. The mysteries of heaven were unpredictable, and there was no time to think too much. Following closely behind, his young spirit flew out. The gates of hell slammed shut and disappeared. The dancing ghosts dispersed, the Yin wind dissipated, and the lonely lamp was extinguished. The quiet room was still the same. The abyss was endless. Li Qingshan walked through the chilly wind and the dancing ghosts. He couldn't even see his own fingers. Even the young spirit couldn't see through the darkness. At the same time, in the miniature world in his main body, the spirit turtle shone with clear light, illuminating everything. It was not for the sake of fortune-telling, but to illuminate his heart. Apart from the indescribable worry in his heart, there was also a strong sense of anticipation. He did not know what he was anticipating, but there was definitely something behind that door. Therefore, he decided to enter the Hell Dao. Even if Oxhead Abien harbored ill intentions towards him, he would only lose his young spirit. At this moment, a hazy green light suddenly appeared in front of him. It flickered and flickered. It was as bright as a star, but also like a will-o'-the-wisp. It grew bigger and brighter. In the blink of an eye, the darkness gradually dispersed, and there was only a winding yellow dirt road in front of him. Extending and disappearing into the vast yellow dust, no one knew where it led to. The words Yellow Springs Road slipped out of his mouth. That's right. Oxhead Abien was sitting on the side of the Yellow Springs path. His muscular body was covered in armor and wrapped in black chains. However, the yellow robe under the armor was already in tatters, and the sleeves of the robe were almost torn into shreds, making it look a little bleak. The ox face looked at Li Qingshan with a faint smile. It seemed to be filled with malice, but it also seemed very friendly. Li Qingshan walked in front of him, raised his head and looked him up and down, thinking, what a big ox, too bad it's not the one I lost, but it's strange, why do I feel a little like it? Oxhead Ah Pang also lowered his head. He stared at him as if he wanted to see through his young spirit. His brows were tightly furrowed, and no one knew what he was thinking. His expression was distorted, as if he was filled with great resentment. Why would Li Qingshan be afraid of him? He stared right at him. Lutian had just passed through the gates of hell when he saw the two of them staring at each other. Both of their faces were filled with indignation. The face of a bull and the face of a human were actually somewhat similar. Among the 10 Yin marshals. Among the 4 who were in charge of human cultivators, Oxhead and Horseface were famous for having a fiery temper. They were not as easy to talk to as the black and white impermanents. I don't care what yang spirit or yin spirit you are. If you refuse to submit, you will definitely not be able to complete the Yellow Springs Road. If you are convicted of going against the laws of the Netherworld, you will be killed and reported. I dared to bet with Oxhead Ah Pang. Others already think that I'm extremely daring. I should really come and see this scene. Oxhead Ah Pang's expression suddenly calmed down. He said to Luton, "You can begin." Lution slowly walked forward and bowed. How does Lord Ah Pang want to bet this round? There's no need to go through so much trouble. Let's bet on big or small. Let's decide the outcome in one round. Oxhead Ah Pang waved his hand impatiently, as if he was chasing away a fly that did not exist. All right. Lution was delighted and took out 2 dice. They were his natal Dharma treasures. They had been shattered in the battle in the demon domain, and he had spent a lot of effort to refine them again. He had spent a total of 20 years refining them. Originally, they were only used to calculate one's fate. He did not expect them to be used as gambling tools. This was extremely beneficial to him. He had at least a 20% chance of winning. However, he was even more confused. Why would Oxhead Ah Pang be so easy to talk to? In the last bet, Oxhead Ah Pang admired his courage, but it was also because he wanted to see him struggle on the edge of life and death. He made fun of him. That game was Pai Gao. He used his lifespan as a bargaining chip. He gambled for a very long time. In the end, he won by luck with a risky move. He even suspected that he had been spared. Oxhead Ah Pang suddenly asked Li Qingshan, "Do you want to bet?" "No, I just want to watch." Li Qingshan took a step back. How could he be so easily dragged down by him? "What right do you have to watch?" Oxhead Ah Pang was furious. He slapped in front of Li Qingshan. The ground shook violently and a murderous aura surged. Lu Tian's body trembled. It was not because he was timid. It was completely instinctive. Oxhead Ah Pang had captured countless human emperors in his life. He treated them like pigs and dogs. If he wanted to beat them, he would beat them. If he wanted to kill them, he would kill them. No matter how fierce you were, you would also feel weak all over when you saw him. Furthermore, this anger was obviously not an act. He was really angry. Li Qingshan put his hands on his waist and straightened his neck. "Why can't I watch?" Lu Tian gave a thumbs up in his heart. Just as he thought that Oxhead Ah Pang was going to slap Li Qingshan to death, Oxhead Ah Pang changed the topic. "Then why don't you roll the dice? I'm not a dealer." Li Qingshan took another 3 steps back and said righteously, "Gambling harms people. None of these mysterious people were good people. Back then he had been tricked by Cheong Chi. Even now, he had not crawled out of the pit. He was about to go to the demon area to fight to the death. This Oxhead ghost obviously had ill intentions towards him. How could he let him have a handle on him? He had once been coaxed by a sugar seller. Even now, he still did not believe in sweet words. Oxhead Ah Pang's eyes were wide open. The metal chains on his body rubbed against his armor, making clanking sounds. Sparks flew everywhere. It was obvious that he was furious. Lutian was stunned. What the hell was gambling harms people? Who was the one who was so excited to watch the show? "Brat, good luck. I can't even protect myself now. I can't save you." However, the development of the situation was out of his expectations. The furious Oxhead Ah Pang suddenly calmed down. He even nodded. "All right then, watch," he said to Lutian. "Roll the dice." I'll do it. Lutian was taken aback once again. He had already taken out the entire set of gambling tools and was already at a great advantage. If he were to roll the dice as well? If he were to roll the dice, he would be able to get any number he wanted. Hurry up. Oxhead Ah Pang was very impatient. Lutian felt very complicated. Why was there such a huge difference between people? However, in the next moment he cast aside all distracting thoughts and grabbed the dice cup with both hands. He slowly shook it. He had prepared for this bet for close to 100 years. It concerned his life and death. He had to give it his all. The yellow springs rode quiet and down. In the vast yellow dust, only the sound of the dice rolling in the dice cup could be heard. Oxhead Ah Pang closed his eyes. It was as though he was listening attentively. Lutian pushed his cultivation to its limits, disrupting the heavenly secrets and changing fate. He stacked layers of illusions on the tiny dice cup in his hand. Li Qingshan blinked. Lutian's yang god aura rapidly weakened, as though it had been sucked into the tiny dice cup. As the dice cup shook, it left behind layers of afterimages. It gave off a hallucinatory feeling. The two dice had a total of 12 sides. There were endless possibilities stacked on top of each other. He could no longer see through them. He could not help but look at Oxhead Ah Pang. He thought to himself, Lutian's entire cultivation is in them. If it was spirit supremacy Guhai, there's a chance he could see through them. Even a ghost immortal in general would not be able to calculate the numbers. I have to gamble on my luck. No, Lutian will definitely deliberately reveal a flaw to lure him into guessing the numbers wrongly. Lutian has already gained the upper hand in this round. How is this Oxhead going to deal with him? Just as Li Qingshan thought, Lutian was meticulously preparing a trap. He deliberately left a thin and indistinct trace in the layers of illusions. As long as he followed this trace, he would be able to break through the layers of illusions and easily calculate the number of sixes on the dice. But the only question is, are you willing to believe in this outcome? Life is a cycle. When things reach an extreme, they move in the opposite direction. Big and small are connected. There is another subtlety hidden in it. There are two possibilities, one, small. But the same question remains. Are you willing to believe in this outcome? Perhaps what you calculate is still an illusion. Since he could deliberately leave behind a flaw, he could leave behind even more flaws to create multiple traps. However, this was not a real trap. If Oxhead Ah Pang thought that it was just a psychological game, he would have fallen into a trap. From an ordinary person's point of view, the two outcomes were extremely different. They were the biggest and smallest. But from the perspective of heavenly secrets, the two outcomes would be infinitely close, even overlapping. Lutian's face thinned, but the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Even if spirit supremacy Guihai was here, he would not be able to calculate all the changes. It was even more impossible for Oxhead Ah Pang. And in fact, the number in the dice cup was neither big nor small. It was both big and small. This was not an ordinary die, but his natal magic treasure. The two dice appeared to be in an illogical state of superposition. Spirit supremacy Guihai could at least lock onto the outcome and give the two dice a certain degree of certainty. Then he could guess based on his luck. However, Oxhead Ah Pang did not have such an ability. Therefore, regardless of whether he chose big or small, he would only obtain the opposite outcome. In the end, he thought that he had made a mistake and miscalculated Lutian's psychology. Mortals believed that gambling was a matter of luck, but they did not know that before the gambling began, the outcome was already clear. It was only divided into certain victory and certain defeat. That was why 9 out of 10 gambles were lost, with the winner taking all. Fate was the highest. Defying the heavens to change fate was always an illusion. A moment of luck did not affect the overall situation. If one was unwilling to resign themselves to fate, they had to stand on the side of fate and search for a chance of survival in the unpredictable heavenly secrets. Even the famous Oxhead Ah Pang was helpless. That was because at that moment, Lutian was the embodiment of fate in this game. This is my sure win game. With a bang, the dice cup fell to the ground. Lutian knelt on one knee and looked fearlessly at Oxhead Ah Pang. He pressed the dice cup with his right hand and beckoned with his left. Lord, please guess. Li Qingshan could not help but feel nervous. Was it big or small? Oxhead Ah Pang slowly opened his eyes and glanced at Li Qingshan. He said to Lu Tian with a faint smile, "You guess first." Lu Tian was taken aback as his body suddenly trembled. His confident expression shattered. "This is me." Oxhead Ah Pang ordered. "I guess big." Lu Tian violently pulled up the dice cup. The 2 dice steadily stopped on the yellow ground. 2 sixes. Big. This was a matter of course. This was his intrinsic Dharma treasure. Big or small could be decided with a single thought. However, his expression looked as though he had been slapped in the face at his most complacent moment. He wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. Oxhead Ah Pang smiled, revealing a row of neat and shiny front teeth. "Oh, it's small. I won. But this is clearly big," Li Qingshan exclaimed. "Look again." Oxhead Ah Pang stretched out his thick index finger and pressed on the 2 dice. With a gentle push, the 2 sixes became 2 ones. Li Qingshan was taken aback for a moment before he burst into laughter. He clutched his stomach and laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. "This bet is too fucking brilliant. Lu Tian, no matter how many tricks you have up your sleeves and how many advantages you have taken, you are still inferior to others in the end. What right do you have to bet with others? What right do you have to bet with others? What right do you have to bet with others? What right do you have to bet with others? What right do you have to bet with others? What right do you have to bet with others?" Lu Tian knelt on the ground as though he was mourning for his father, dejected and silent. Oxhead Abian chuckled and said to Li Qingshan, "Lu Tian, you've lost. Come with me." The laughter stopped abruptly. Li Qingshan pointed at Lu Tian and then at his own nose. That's right, I'm talking about you." Oxhead Ah Bien's face was honest and sly. Lu Tian was dumbfounded. The ups and downs of life came too quickly. Li Qingshan shrugged his shoulders. "I'm not Lu Tian." He was on full alert as he slowly retreated. "Lu Tian, now that things have come to this, you still dare to deny it." Oxhead Ah Bien laughed sinisterly as he spread his fingers and grabbed at Li Qingshan. Please click on Yunlai Pavilion to view this book. Chapter 1534. Fuck you. Li Qingshan cursed. His body swayed and changed. He seemed to pounce left and right, forward and backward. In the blink of an eye, he changed dozens of positions. Please read this book. Oxhead Ah Pang only caught a series of afterimages, but the yang spirit turned into a phantom and escaped from between his fingers. Li Qingshan had not read the books for nothing after all. He had mastered all the techniques related to the heavenly tome of freedom. He had already fused the divine escape of the 5 elements and the illusory demon escape together. He had reached a level where he had become complacent. After dodging the grab, he immediately escaped out of the road to the underworld. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the yellow dust without a trace. Interesting. Oxhead Ah Pang revealed a look of surprise. His grab seemed ordinary, but no one knew how many young spirits of the human emperor had been caught. No matter how many changes one had, one could not escape from his grasp. Just like a dog butcher, no matter how fierce the dog was, he could catch it easily. Often, before they were caught, they would already be lying on the ground and whining. However, this wild dog today was a little different. It was not that it was very powerful, but it was not afraid of him at all. He laughed loudly. "Dian, I respected you as a human emperor. How dare you bet with me? Why are you panicking like a stray dog now?" Lu Tian was still sitting on the ground, staring at the 2 dice in a daze. He had been completely ignored. Li Qingshan was not provoked and did not reveal any aura. He had been in heaven for so many years, and his endurance had long been perfected. However, when he heard Oxhead Ah Pang shout Lu Tian, he still felt angry. Damn it, these ghosts are really shameless. Lu Tian looks smart, but he is actually an idiot. He is 100 times stronger than you. Why should he be fair to you? Lu Tian's heart was in a mess. The Oxhead Ah Pang he knew was not like this. On the contrary, he was famous for keeping his promises. Otherwise, he would not have been able to escape the calamity back then. With just a casual grab, there was no way he could escape. However, even if Oxhead Ah Pang hated Li Qingshan for talking nonsense, why should he tolerate him? Couldn't he have taken him down long ago? There was no need for him to ruin the bet and go back on his words. When he tried to divine the cause and effect, the backlash brought about by the chaotic numerology almost caused his yang spirit to collapse in an instant. He only saw an extremely chaotic vortex. He was merely caught in the crossfire. Oxhead Ah Pang did not chase after him. He laughed maniacally. There is no return on the road to the netherworld. Where can you escape to? Humph, I can't beat you, but can't I escape? Li Qingshan didn't think much of it, but he suddenly realized. Beneath his feet was the same winding road to the Yellow Springs. When it was narrow, it was like a sheep's intestines. When it was wide, it could only fit a single carriage. It was uneven and covered in dust. It looked like an ordinary dirt road in the countryside. He frowned and suddenly changed directions, but no matter how he changed directions, the Yellow Springs road extended to wherever he flew to. Moreover, it always extended out of his field of vision, as if it knew which direction he would choose. He raised his head abruptly and saw Oxhead Ah Pang sitting in front of him, waiting for him with a simple and honest smile on his face. Ghost hitting the wall? No, the so-called ghost hitting the wall of mortals is just an illusion. Low-level ghosts confuse one's five senses. I cultivate the heavenly book of freedom, and walk the path of the great freedom heavenly demon. How can I be confused like this? Even ghost immortals can't. Oxhead Ah Pang took out a broken wine pouch and gulped down a few mouthfuls. He let out a breath that reeked of alcohol. Thousands of roads and tens of thousands of small paths all lead to the Yellow Springs. Li Qingshan immediately came to a realization. So the Tao of the human world is the Yellow Springs Road. Oxhead Ah Pang shook his huge bull head. I don't care if you are human or human shit. You will have to walk the Yellow Springs Road eventually. Li Qingshan appeared and stood in front of Oxhead Ah Pang. What trapped him was not Oxhead Ah Pang, but the supreme law of the Hell Tao and the cycle of life and death of the entire six paths of reincarnation. Even if he went through another heavenly tribulation, he would not be able to escape from the Yellow Springs Road. Since he could not escape, he could only fight. Come on, Oxhead Ghost, let me fight you. Oxhead Ah Pang looked at him from the side. Lutian, kneel down and kowtow 3 times. Call me Grandpa Ox 3 times. I will let you live for another 500 years. Lutian looked around and scratched his ears and cheeks anxiously. He wished he could replace Li Qingshan's identity as Lutian. If he could extend his lifespan by 500 years, kowtowing a few times was nothing. Moreover, Oxhead Ah Pang was enough to be his great-grandfather. Not everyone's path was as radical as Li Liehua and Chao Tianjiao. His path was about being happy and content with one's fate. Furthermore, after seeing the huge vortex, he knew that if he could not escape today, it would not be as simple as falling into samsara. He would probably be smashed into pieces and have his soul destroyed. Oxhead Ah Pang drank another mouthful of wine. I will let go of whoever kowtows. Lutian immediately changed his posture and kowtowed 3 times. He called out, Grandpa Ox, 3 times. He was afraid that his kowtows were not loud enough. Get lost. Oxhead Ah Pang waved his hand, and Lutian rolled into a crack beside the Yellow Springs Road. He suddenly woke up in the quiet room. The lonely lamp was still there, and it was like a dream. The gates of hell, the Yellow Springs Road, Oxhead Ah Pang, it was as if they had never existed. Only the damage to his yang spirit was real. He opened his palm, and the 2 dice lay quietly. When he bent down to kowtow, he grabbed the life-bound item. It was still 2 blood-red ones. He had finally escaped with great difficulty, but his heart was extremely heavy. He muttered, No wonder I can't survive 6 heavenly tribulations. I've lost this round. He thought that he could seek fortune and avoid calamity with a little skill from a fortune-teller and do whatever he wanted. He thought that he could avoid all the complicated matters of the world by relying on a series of bets. In the end, it was all a lie. All his schemes were not as good as 3 kowtows. Oxhead Ah Pang said to Li Qingshan, It's your turn. Huh? How can 3 be enough? Li Qingshan's body shook, and his thoughts turned into layers of illusions. 1 split into 2, 2 split into 4, 4 split into 8. The heavenly book of freedom was actually not known for attacking. Even the world-destroying divine fire that he had accidentally comprehended would not be able to threaten a powerful ghost immortal like Oxhead Apang. However, in the sky, Li Qingshan had read through all the military strategies, and he finally comprehended this supreme technique. For ordinary cultivators, creating too many clones during a battle would cause them to have to divert their attention to control them. Not only would it be useless, but it would also be harmful. Furthermore, even if they formed an army formation, it would still be inconvenient to move. However, this was the Yellow Springs Road where there was no escape. Li Qingshan's will was condensed, and his heart was as firm as iron. Furthermore, his thought clones were like the lowest level of corpses. In an instant, they formed an army. They did not need to be commanded, and they automatically formed layers of military formations. With one thought, the military aura was vast and mighty, surging into the yang spirit. It shone brightly, and killing intent soared into the sky, dispersing the yellow dust. Oxhead Apang was also a little moved. He stood up. Kid, aren't you afraid of the torture of hell and never being able to reincarnate? Haha, I'll go to the Yellow Springs platform to recruit my old subordinates. I'll raise 100,000 flags and kill the king of hell. Remember, your grandfather's surname is Li. To be continued. Carrot. Chapter 1535. Li Qingshan turned into a god of war. His body was like a mountain and his head was like a cliff. He punched down. Boom. A strong wind blew and dispersed the evil wind and ghost fire. The yellow dust made the sky blue. A khaki-colored mushroom cloud rose into the sky. With the mastery of the heavenly book of freedom, it was not inferior to any god or demon transformation. However, there was no joy on Li Qingshan's face at all. Under the iron punch, the ox-headed Abien crossed his arms before him, forcefully blocking the punch. His figure did not waver, nor did he take a single step back. His sleeves and clothes ruffled in the fierce wind. The ox-head had a simple smile on his face and his eyes shone with red light. This punch is quite strong. So strong. Li Qingshan was shocked. Much stronger than that woman Chao Tianjiao. These past few years, he had come into contact with Chao Tianjiao quite a bit. Of course, the main reason was that he had been taken out of the heavens for sexual intercourse. Often, if there was a disagreement, they would fight, but in the end, he would still be raped. Although it wasn't a proper duel, he could still roughly estimate her strength. She cultivated the path of Black Tortoise. As the leader of the 6 servants, she was already a powerhouse among human immortals. However, she was not this strong. Oxhead Apang suddenly blocked Li Qingshan's fist and said proudly, "Kid, if you can make me move half a step, I will let you go." Before he finished, the ground shook. Li Qingshan took a step forward and clenched his fists. He raised them high and smashed them like hammers. "Do you think I will believe your nonsense?" Oxhead Apang's expression darkened and turned ruthless. A red light flashed in his eyes and he punched forward. Boom! The ground shattered and sank a few feet. Smoke and dust filled the air and covered the Yellow Springs Road. Oxhead Apang stood still and maintained the posture of his fist facing up. On the other hand, Li Qingshan's arms were broken and he dissipated into military aura. He lost his balance and fell forward. Oxhead Apang sneered. "You only know this move?" Li Qingshan's mountain-like body fell over and he smiled sinisterly. Amidst the smoke and dust, a black light suddenly flashed. A vertical eye opened between his brows and locked onto Oxhead Abien. A beam of black fire surged out. World Annihilation Divine Fire. Oxhead Apang was shocked and was instantly engulfed by the black flames. In the quiet room, recovering from his defeat, Lutian looked at Li Qingshan and muttered to himself, "It's all thanks to you this time. I hope you can escape with your life?" Shaking his head with a bitter smile, he said, "How is that possible?" He had investigated Oxhead Abin in detail. His background was a mystery. It wasn't as clear as the black and white impermanence. The only thing that could be confirmed was that his strength and status ranked first among the 10 marshals. There was once a human sovereign who, when he was nearing the end of his life, overcame 6 heavenly tribulations and became a human immortal, greatly extending his lifespan. In the end, when Oxhead Ah-Pang came to take him away on time, this newly advanced human immortal, perhaps because he had been under too much pressure all this while, became a little complacent after successfully transcending the tribulation. He treated Oxhead Ah-Pang as an ordinary ghost immortal and casually mocked him. He was killed on the spot by Oxhead Ah-Pang, and his primordial spirit did not even manage to escape. Not to mention longevity, he could not even enter the cycle of reincarnation. Furthermore, Li Qingshan was only a human sovereign, and only his yang spirit had entered the Hell Dao. How could he be a match for Oxhead Ah-Pang? The yellow soil melted into lava and churned. The power of the world-destroying divine fire was astonishing, but it also consumed a lot of energy. The thought clones disappeared one by one, and the army turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Only Li Qingshan was left, and he pounced toward Oxhead Ah-Pang with an indomitable will. Black iron chains rushed out of the black flames like black dragons, tightly locking onto Li Qingshan. Not only could he not break free, he could not even cast any spells. The black flames dissipated. Oxhead Ah-Pang stood in the churning lava. The dark brown hair on his head and his tattered clothes were mostly burnt, and he looked a little pathetic. However, other than that, he was not injured. He suddenly pulled the iron chain and pulled Li Qingshan, who was wrapped like a dumpling, in front of him. His eyes were scarlet with rage, and his nostrils were spewing hot air, as if he wanted to skin him alive. Li Qingshan glanced at his feet. He sneered and said, "Do you think I'll believe your nonsense?" Oxhead Ah-Pang's expression froze. His right foot had already taken half a step back. This was an instinctive reaction in the face of the world-destroying divine fire. It was not because he was pushed back. Just like how mortals would naturally retreat when facing a burning fire. However, retreat was retreat. No matter what the reason was, at that moment just now, in the face of the terrifying world-destroying divine fire, his mind was slightly shaken. He took a deep breath. The strong wind blew out the magma, and it condensed into soil and stone again. The yellow dust enveloped him again. A yellow soil road was winding, and it was unknown where it came from and where it was going. He carried Li Qingshan on his back and strode forward. Once again, Li Qingshan mocked loudly, "What bullshit, ghost? That's all there is to it. You have to lick back the saliva that you spit out. Dogs don't eat their own shit." Oxhead Ah-Pang remained silent and focused on his journey. Li Qingshan didn't care anyway. If he wasn't chained up, he would have exploded his yang spirit and blasted his face full of blood. Therefore, he mocked, "Why don't you change your name to Doghead Ah-Pang? You only dare to bite people who are weaker than you, and when you see people who are stronger, you will wag your tail and beg for mercy. If I go through 6 heavenly tribulations, will you be able to block one of my punches?" Oxhead Ah-Pang walked faster and faster. He couldn't tell north from south. It was as if he was just walking randomly. However, the Yellow Springs Road continued to extend under his feet. Li Qingshan thought to himself, "This Doghead Ah-Pang probably wants to send me to hell to be punished. He can't bear to kill me now. If I don't scold his ancestors for 18 generations, it will be difficult to dispel the hatred in my heart." Therefore, he completely activated his scolding mode. "Hey, you look like a dog, but aren't you still a dog? You run around and bite people everywhere. These chains are the chains to tie up the dog, right? Tell me who your master is, the 10 Yama Kings? The 9 heavens immortals and Buddhas? Why don't you put it around your own neck? Why are you using it to tie up your grandfather?" Oxhead Ah-Pang's eyes were scarlet red like blood. His chest rose and fell violently. His breathing became rougher and rougher. He could no longer bear it. "I know a bull. I don't know how much higher he is than you. You're both bulls, but why is the difference so great?" Oxhead Ah-Pang suddenly stopped in his tracks. His entire body trembled. Just when Li Qingshan thought that he was going to kill him, a teardrop fell onto the ground. With a pitter-patter sound, A teardrop fell into the soil and rolled into a mud ball. Pitter-patter, the teardrop fell continuously like a broken string. In the blink of an eye, it gathered into a muddy yellow puddle. Li Qingshan couldn't see his face and was greatly surprised. Doghead Ah Pang, what's wrong with you? Oxhead Ah Pang slowly knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. He beat his chest and stomped his feet in anger. He howled at the top of his lungs, but no one knew what he was cursing. It was as if he had gone mad. Li Qingshan was stunned. My scolding skills have already progressed to such a level? I can even curse until I'm mad. Unknowingly, the chains around his body loosened, and he moved a little. If he wanted to escape, there was no way to escape on the road to hell. If he wanted to fight, he was clearly no match for Oxhead Ah Pang. For a moment he didn't know what to do. Moreover, he seemed a little embarrassed that he had scolded him to tears. The great Een commander's spirit was too weak. He asked tentatively, Hey, why are you crying? The road is wrong. The road is wrong. Oxhead Ah Pang wailed and beat his chest. The sound was like a war drum that shook the heavens. But isn't there only one road here? You should regret bullying your grandfather. Oh no, you shouldn't have bullied me. It's okay, just let me go back. Li Qingshan patted his shoulder and patiently persuaded him. It would be best if he could protect his young spirit. No, you must go to hell. Oxhead Ah Pang suddenly turned his head. The hair on his face was wet, but his expression was as determined as iron. Arg, you stubborn dog-headed ghost. Eat another punch from your grandpa. Li Qingshan threw a punch over. Oxhead Ah Pang said in a deep voice, It's the bull you mentioned. He asked me to guide you. Chapter 1536. In the chaotic battlefield of the primordial era, a young man with thick eyebrows, large eyes, and a horned helmet on his head held a broken battle-axe. Fresh blood flowed down the blade of the battle-axe. It was unknown how many enemies he had killed, but his eyes were blank. With a mighty dragon roar, a huge dragon soared into the sky, riding the wind. Its huge wings covered half the sky, and its power dominated the entire battlefield. It wanted to swallow him. The young man roared angrily, waved his battle-axe, and faced the huge dragon. In the dazzling light, the young man saw the shadow of a man standing on the dragon's body. With a gentle wave of his hand, the huge dragon retracted its wings and sharp teeth. The battle-axe hit nothing, and a long crack appeared on the ground. It spread to a distant hill, and suddenly collapsed. The man laughed. I remember you, you are called Ah Pang. The young man shuddered, feeling that the man was far more terrifying than the huge dragon. He did not dare to look directly into his eyes. I am Ah Pang. Ah Pang, you have lost. Are you willing to surrender? No, we have not lost yet. At this time, the young man saw many familiar figures behind the man, and flew into a rage. You traitors! Some avoided his line of sight, some sighed and advised, Ah Pang, we have lost, we should surrender. Some were very impatient. You are just a minion, why should you be buried with us? They revealed a trace of awkwardness, omitting the title in the middle. The man who controlled the dragon waved his hand, and everyone quieted down. If you are not willing to surrender, then you can only die. I see that you are a good boy. I am not willing to kill you. Do you want to die? The young man deeply lowered his head, and trembled even more. He was not afraid of those damned traitors, no matter how strong they were, but he was afraid of this man who controlled the dragon, no matter how gentle his voice was. Moreover, he was afraid of death. He wanted to live, even if it was just one more day. He put down the battle-axe in his hand. So he survived, 100 times longer than expected, 1,000 times longer. He even became a character who could decide the life and death of others. His duties in the netherworld helped him avoid many disasters, and he was deeply grateful for this. However, he was well aware that, more importantly, he was just a small fry. He could not change the situation, and no one needed him to do anything. This was also good, this was also good. Until one day, a voice said to him, Aben, can you help me? It was a familiar voice, a familiar tone, as if it had not been tempered by the passage of time, beckoning him to do a small thing within his power. He saw oxen with a broken horn. His gaze was gentle and tired. You brat, have you even forgotten about me? Your Majesty! He knelt on the ground. I will never dare to forget. His heart trembled, but he did not know whether it was from excitement or fear. Such a rule has appeared in the infernal realm? Get up quickly. I'm not that guy, nor am I His Majesty. I'm just an old guy who came to ask for your help. He was ashamed and quickly stood up. Your Majesty, what can I do for you? Old 5 is with you, right? Yes, I'm afraid. His heart trembled, and he hurriedly tried to think of a way to shirk the responsibility. He was just a small marshal, but he could not bear the responsibility. He was also afraid that if he refused too harshly, the other party could take his life with just a thought. I'm not asking you to release old 5. I have a little brother, his name is Li Qingshan. He will come to the 6 paths of reincarnation in the future, and I want you to bring him to meet old 5. Li Qingshan. He had never heard of this name before, so he should not be someone important. After all, he did not live all these years in vain, whether it was in the 6 paths of reincarnation or above the 9 heavens. He knew all the important people by heart. He is a mortal, but in a few years he should have some cultivation. Oxen was rather proud. Suddenly he felt indignant. He is just a mortal, how can he be called a little brother? Sending people to hell is his specialty, and it is not a difficult thing to do. But when he thought of the responsibility, he struggled in his heart. It's fine if it's difficult. If not for the fact that I have no other choice, I don't want to disturb you anymore. You know that I am in the infernal realm? Of course, everyone knows Oxhead Abbin. Who doesn't? Oxen smiled and looked at him. For a moment he was a little lost in thought, as if he was thinking of the past. Suddenly he came back to his senses. All right, I should go. Old people always like to think about the past. I am happy that you are alive. Too many clansmen who should not have died have died. It is time to put an end to this. He was shocked. We are from the same clan, and I was his little brother back then. Now, I suspect that he wants to harm me, and unknowingly, even I believe those slanderous words? What right do a traitor like me have to bear such a heavy responsibility? Aren't you afraid that I will betray that Li Qingshan if I go? What nonsense are you talking about? You walk your own path, as long as you don't let yourself down. Why do you need to take responsibility for me? If you really want to talk about responsibility, I was the one who defeated him back then. That guy is good to you, it is better than dying with me. But don't leak this matter, or else I will not let you go. Rather than saying it was a threat, it was more of a warning. He was afraid that he would be confused and do the wrong thing. Am I not a traitor? This was the knot in his heart for life. On the Yellow Springs Road, Li Qingshan grabbed Oxhead Ah Pang's shoulders and shook him forcefully. Tell me, where is he? Is he locked up in the Hell Realm? All right, I will go and save him now. What right do you have? Oxhead Ah Pang could not help but ask in return. A kid whose strength was far inferior to him actually dared to say such big words. What right do I have? Brother Ah Pang, I did not know that you were an underground worker hidden among the enemy's ranks. I have offended you just now. Please be magnanimous and forgive me. Li Qingshan did not suspect that this was a trap of the enemy. Because his current strength was too insignificant, he did not need to scheme at all. Any Yin commanders would be able to take him down. Also, looking at this oxhead now, no matter how he looked at it, it felt very familiar. Looking at the wet ox hair on his face, he felt even more sorry for him. My great taunt technique was simply too powerful. Didn't I accidentally injure my allies? Look at how wronged he is. He quickly coaxed him so that he could ask where Brother Ox was. You are right, I am a traitor and lackey. Oxhead Ah Pang said indifferently. Li Qingshan thought that he was saying those words out of anger, so he felt even more apologetic. How could that be? I see that you have thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a dignified appearance. You are the tyrant of the oxen. Oxhead Ah Pang then told him about the defeat and surrender, but because there were too many names, it was not convenient to mention, so he only gave a rough outline. Li Qingshan was shocked. I did not expect that a thick-eyebrowed and big-eyed fellow like you would also betray the revolution. Brother Ox is really magnanimous. He actually let a damned traitor come to receive me. What if this fellow betrays me? Oxhead Ah Pang sneered. Do you still dare to go to hell with me? Since he trusts you, then I trust you, so what if I go to hell? What if I betray you? That is also because our judgment is not good. We cannot blame others. However, you were forced to surrender to the enemy after losing the battle. If you dare to betray me, even if Brother Ox asks me to spare your life, I will definitely not let you off. Repaying kindness was repaying kindness. Taking revenge was taking revenge. Kindness and grudges were not related. When Oxhead Ah Pang heard this, he laughed. This kind of temperament, no wonder. He stood up and patted the dust off his face. Don't worry, this time, I will not surrender again. He exuded a resolute aura. Li Qingshan was very familiar with this aura. It was the aura of risking his life to do something. Oxhead Ah Pang bowed deeply to him. Kid, I deliberately tested you just now, to see if you have the qualifications to take on such a heavy responsibility. I will also apologize to you. However, after being scolded by you, I feel much better in my heart. Your mouth is too poisonous. You should go to hell with your tongue pulled out. Li Qingshan touched his head in embarrassment. You flatter me. You flatter me. Oxhead Ah Pang's eyes twitched. Was I praising you? Let's go. There's still a long way to go. The road to the netherworld was long. In the yellow dust, the two of them walked side by side, chatting and laughing, turning enemies into friends. Li Qingshan asked and found out that Brother Ox was not in the Hell Dao. He wanted to see another great sage, who was suppressed in the deepest part of the endless hell. Because of harmony, it was not convenient to mention his name and nickname. He was finally relieved. Compared to that unreliable bitch Su Min Rao, this person was the proper guide. After Oxhead Ah Pang heard about the ultimate ruins, he also guessed which great sage it was. However, because of harmony, it was not convenient to mention his name and nickname. Therefore, he took out his wineskin, and the two of them drank to their heart's content. They cursed together, which could be considered a side dish. Li Qingshan took advantage of the drunkenness and asked a question. Didn't you not want to get involved in this mess? Why did you agree? I originally thought that a bad life is better than a good death. Oxhead Ah Pang gulped down a mouthful of strong wine. What about now? Oxhead Ah Pang let out a breath that reeked of alcohol. I don't want to be a dog anymore. Flames burned in his eyes. It was the flames of war that had been extinguished for thousands of years. This time, if he lost, he would die in battle. Chapter 1537. Li Qingshan felt a surge of passion in his chest. It was as if the strong alcohol was burning in his stomach. The journey was long, and the warrior was about to reach the final battlefield. Brother Apin, how do we go to the deepest part of the infernal hell? Ox had asked. Kid, are you afraid of suffering? Li Qingshan nodded. I'm most afraid of suffering. Afraid of pain and death? Why are you asking this? Oxhead looked at him in surprise. You're quite honest. Li Qingshan smiled honestly. I don't have many good points, but I'm honest. Alright, then I'll bring you to the 18 levels of hell. Oxhead looked as if he had disregarded life and death. Is there danger? There are some risks. After all, there are still the 10 kings of hell and Xidigarba. If we accidentally reveal our whereabouts, everything will be over. Li Qingshan muttered. No, it's too dangerous. This is completely a gamble on luck. Is there any other way? Oxhead Ah Bien looked at his face. Even when he heard the name Xidigarba Bodhisattva, he did not reveal the slightest bit of panic. He only became much more cautious. Oxhead Ah Bien could not help but sigh in admiration. This kid who was afraid of suffering, pain, and death had a fearless aura. He advanced bravely and would never retreat. There's another way. That's extremely difficult. Tell me about it. Li Qingshan smiled. Although I'm afraid of suffering, I'm not afraid to listen. I'll send you to the netherworld as Letion. Then, you can blend in with the evil spirits and let the judge send you to the 18 levels of hell. I see. Li Qingshan nodded and muttered. The former was undoubtedly a shortcut. With Oxhead leading the way, he only needed to follow. The latter, however, had to enter the 9 hells to be punished. The pain was needless to say. Forget it, then let's not take the shortcut. Just fight to your death. Sigh, I thought it would be as satisfying as killing the kings of hell with 100,000 banners. I didn't expect that I would still have to suffer. Oxhead laughed. Killing the kings of hell with 100,000 banners? How can it be so easy? Aren't you afraid of suffering? Once they entered hell, they could neither live nor die. If you can't take it and confess everything, you might as well take a risk with me. Maybe. Li Qingshan was not stubborn. Maybe I'll confess everything, but that's the path I've chosen. Even if I fail, I can only blame myself for being incompetent. Oxhead Ah Pang's heart trembled. The words that sounded very dispirited gave him a feeling that was even more powerful than the words, "Kill the king of hell with 100,000 flags." Don't blame the heavens, don't blame others, walk your own path. Take responsibility for your own mistakes. He suddenly understood what that person meant. It was not for him to repay his past kindness and die for the so-called loyalty, but for him to choose the path he wanted to walk. That was why he had never come to him for help over the years, no matter how many times he had failed. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the courage to refuse when that person invited him to join them at his strongest. No, not only would he not refuse, he would even forget himself and join in the fun. For the great cause that had long been destroyed, for the sake of illusory hope, they would not hesitate to die in battle. However, that person did not think of such trash. What he needed were like-minded comrades, not small fries who were willing to sacrifice themselves for his great cause. That was why he only came to see him after he had sunk in hell for a long time and had enough of being a dog, to let him make another choice. He suddenly recalled the distant past. He has never treated me as a minion. In an instant, the high and mighty figure of the man on the dragon's back, as well as the shadow under the dragon's wings, suddenly disappeared. 2 streams of hot tears flowed down. Li Qingshan thought to himself, this Oxhead is too emotional. Oxhead Ah Pang suddenly turned his head. He glared at Li Qingshan with his eyes filled with hot tears. You're right. I'm just a guide, you have to walk your own path. Don't expect me to help you, I have my own things to do. He wanted to try to transcend the 7 heavenly tribulations and become a perfected immortal. Only then would he have a chance to avenge himself. Actually, after so many years of accumulation and the contributions of countless human emperors, it was already enough. He had lived longer than most perfected immortals. However, he did not dare to try. He was afraid that he would be struck to death by the tribulation lightning or killed by the dead demon. He was also afraid that he would succeed in transcending the tribulation. He used to think that since he was already immortal, there was no need to take such a risk. If he really reached the 9 heavens and was swept into the great tribulation of heaven and earth, he might die even faster. He did not want to face those familiar faces again, and he did not want to join any side. Whether it was the leader of the past or that terrifying man, he did not dare to be enemies with them. He would rather hide in hell and be a small commander. He used this to avoid the great tribulation, thinking that he was smart. Only now did he understand that the reason why he could avoid the great tribulation was because of the tacit consent of the 2 men. One wanted to use him as a model to show his magnanimity and encourage more people to surrender. The other did not want to drag him into the battle because of their old friendship. That was why he could live an ignoble life. Actually, all the previous great tribulation of heaven and earth were fought to the point of darkness. How could the hell realm be peaceful? A few of the 10 Yama kings had fallen, and the 10 great commanders had been rotated countless times. However, he, a traitor, could continue to live on. At the end of the previous great tribulation, the famous spiritual stone monkey had barged into the hell realm, wanting to save Old 5. The 4 judges had escaped a little too late, and 3 of them were killed with a single strike of his cudgel. The spiritual stone monkey patted his head and said, "Hee, on account of your bull head, old son shall spare your life. If I bump into you again, don't blame me for being merciless." That was why he was lucky enough to escape. But how many times could he be so lucky? The intensity of the great tribulation of heaven and earth was getting higher and more frequent. Maybe he would be sent to the battlefield in the next Great Tribulation. By then, he would really become a small fry. Even if it was just to preserve his life, he had to take action. It was just that this brat beside him looked a little amusing, but he was born to face the Great Tribulation and had an extremely strong killing nature. He would not be soft-hearted when it came to killing traitors and lackeys. He could not be considered a powerful character now, but Leader Li said that he was still immortal. How long had it been until now? That spiritual stone monkey was just a piece of broken rock back then. If you don't want to help, then don't help. Why are you staring at me? Li Qingshan scratched his head. He could not understand what this ox-head Ah Pang was thinking. Let's go. There's no time to lose. Let's set off quickly. Ox-head Ah Pang felt that time was running out. Otherwise, if this brat were to pat his head and say, "Heh, on account of your ox-head, I'll spare your life," he might as well bang his head against the wall and die. But it was more likely that he would change the topic and say, "Ha, I'm lying to you. Tell me, are you called Lution? Look at my middle finger. Tell me, is it 6? Is it 6? He had no doubt that this brat would definitely do such a thing. He was much worse than that monkey. All right. Li Qingshan saw that Ox-head Ah Pang's expression was suddenly unfriendly. He could only follow him and asked, "But how can I get the judge to send me to the 18th level of hell?" He felt that he had not committed such a great sin. If he was only sent to the 3rd or 5th level, wouldn't he be suffering for nothing? Ox-head Ah Pang said in a muffled voice, "Just act normally." Chapter 1538. After passing the boundary stone, Li Qingshan immediately heard the sound of splashing water. The yellow dust in front of him gradually dispersed, and a huge river blocked his path. The smoke was vast and boundless. The phosphorescence in the river flickered, reflecting the river water and making it look like a green jade belt. The river was filled with beautiful red flowers. There were flowers but no leaves. They were like blood and fire, as if they were burning. The sky suddenly became clear, dark blue, and dark. There were no stars or moon, and it looked abnormally high. He had never seen such a high sky before, as if it was about to leave the mortal world. Yes, this was the place that was the furthest from the mortal world. Even the dead hungry ghost path had a little more vitality. There was a narrow wooden bridge on the river. Perhaps it was because it had been eroded by the river water, but it led straight to the vast smoke, where it was difficult to see with the naked eye. The green river, the blood-red flowers, and the blue sky were unusually bright. It was as if all the dust on the road had been swept away, causing one to involuntarily want to walk forward and walk on the long bridge. Suddenly, he saw some sparse figures lining up to get on the bridge, as if they had suddenly appeared. "Brother Abin, you arrived first." Li Qingshan suddenly turned around and happened to see a long, white face. At a closer glance, he discovered it was the face of a horse. Behind him was a miserable-looking old man, walking over from the Yellow Springs road that they had just taken. He understood in his heart, there is only one Yellow Springs road, but it leads to countless worlds. In other words, there are countless paths. This horseface is probably the legendary horseface. This time, the Ox-head and Horseface are all gathered. "Brother, you're back too." Ox-head Abin smiled honestly. Horseface glanced at Li Qingshan and lowered his voice. "Are you lucky this time?" "It's not bad." "Brother, you really like to play. I have nothing to do anyway." Ox-head and Horseface walked side by side and bragged like brothers. From time to time, they would burst into laughter. The soul-reaping envoys in front of them moved to the side and bowed. They quickly moved to the side and bowed in greeting, inviting them to go on the bridge first. He and the old man followed obediently from behind. If not for seeing Ox-head Abin crying on the Yellow Springs road, Li Qingshan must have thought that his life was so comfortable that there was no need for him to rebel. Looking at it now, he felt that he was pretending to be courteous. Li Qingshan looked around on the bridge and thought to himself, this must be the bridge of helplessness. The sigh of the old man next to him became more and more deep and helpless. Sure enough, he sighed helplessly on the bridge of helplessness. The old man suddenly asked, "Fellow Taoist, what have you prepared?" Prepare for what? Li Qingshan was confused. What for? Of course it's for bribing, the old man said matter-of-factly. Li Qingshan was surprised. I'm already dead. Do I still need to tidy up? Perhaps this thought was too intense. Horseface turned around and glanced at him. He smiled at Oxhead and said, Big brother, you won too ruthlessly. This brat is going to suffer. Oxhead Pang chuckled. There are no fathers and sons in a casino. Li Qingshan's face darkened. He immediately replied, I was a father too. This time, it was Oxhead Pang's face that darkened. The old man widened his eyes and looked at him. He immediately distanced himself from him. Horseface was also surprised. He laughed out loud. Interesting, really interesting. He's really bold. No wonder he dared to bet with you. It looks like he's still not convinced. Oxhead Pang sneered. There will be a time when he'll be convinced. Horseface smiled maliciously. Yes, no matter how heroic you are in the world, you have to be convinced when you're here. You have to be convinced. Li Qingshan muttered, a horse doesn't know how long its face is, and an ox doesn't know how to bend its horns. Oxhead and Horseface faces darkened. Horseface said coldly, What did you say? The proverb. Li Qingshan had an expression that said, Are you illiterate? The old man had already retreated 10 steps away. He looked at him as if he was a lunatic. Horseface glared at Li Qingshan. Big brother, just throw this brat down. No, that would be letting him off easy. Send him to Magistrate Lu, that guy is very greedy. Oxhead Pang nodded slightly and said meaningfully, Of course. If not for the fact that Li Qingshan did not forget to mention him, he would have praised him for his good performance. After crossing the Bridge of Helplessness, a platform that was 100 feet tall stood. It was not very tall, but when Li Qingshan looked up, he had the illusion that it led straight to the sky. But there was an illusion that it went straight to the sky, like an all-piercing the unusually high night sky. On the straight and smooth wall, the words, Village Viewing Platform, were written. Below the village viewing platform, there was a huge ghost with a green face and fangs. He guarded the platform with a steel fork in his hand. There were many snacks on the table beside him. There was a red box in front of him. It was unknown what it was used for. Seeing that Oxhead and Horseface had arrived, he quickly stood up and forced a flattering smile on his green face. Marshal, you two have worked hard. Hurry up and come and rest. Li Qingshan walked towards the village viewing platform. With a swoosh, a steel fork blocked his way. The green-faced ghost shouted, Where's the merit? Li Qingshan was stunned. What merit? The green-faced ghost knocked on the red box beside him impatiently. Only then did Li Qingshan realize that there were 3 mottled words written on it. Merit box. Li Qingshan's eyes widened. That works? Poor ghost, you want to go up the village viewing platform without merit? If you want to go up quickly. If not, get lost. Don't block the rich man behind you. Li Qingshan saw that the ghost's cultivation level was far inferior to his. At most, he had only undergone 4 heavenly tribulations. However, if he fought, he would be taken down by Oxhead and Horseface in minutes. He could not force his way through. With a thought, he grabbed the old man behind him and said with a smile, Brother, please help me. I came out in a hurry today and didn't bring any money. I will definitely repay you in the future. The old man felt that it was ridiculous. What did he mean by coming out in a hurry? Did he think that he could go back? There was no future. Just as he was about to reject mercilessly, he met Li Qingshan's eyes. He was in a daze. When he came back to his senses, he had already helped him contribute a portion of merit. A supreme-grade spirit jade in the merit box made a clanging sound. With the mastery of the heavenly book of freedom, Li Qingshan was already able to use the heavenly demon bewitching technique freely. Taking advantage of the fact that the old man was in a life-and-death situation and was uneasy, it was indeed effective. Of course, this merit was not much. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to fool him. The green-faced ghost grinned and raised his steel fork in satisfaction. He let Li Qingshan pass and walked towards the village viewing platform without looking back. How dare you? The old man flew into a rage. He was also a demon in this world. Since when had he ever suffered like this? Right when he was about to catch up to Li Qingshan, the steel fork was lowered again with a swish. The green-faced ghost knocked the merit box. Virtue! That was my merit just now. Merit! The green-faced ghost did not care about this. Since he could tell that one was a poor ghost and the other was a rich man, why would he take one if he could take 2 portions of merit? However, to his disappointment, the old man did not go up the village viewing platform in the end. But it did not matter anyway. The old man looked up fiercely and saw Li Qingshan go up the village viewing platform. Seeing that he was watching from below, Li Qingshan smiled and waved at him, "Thanks." The old man stomped his feet and cursed. Li Qingshan ignored him. He covered his eyes with his hands and looked into the distance. Suddenly, the smile on his face disappeared. What he saw was not the crouching ox village, but a bustling metropolis filled with tall buildings. When he was young, it had appeared in his dreams countless times. It was his hometown that he had basically forgotten. Chapter 1539. Perhaps this village viewing platform was essentially a magical formation that could reflect the deepest memories of the people on the platform about their hometown. However, no matter how he circulated the Book of Freedom, the scene in front of him was still vivid and lifelike. There was not a single fluctuation. He looked down the platform and suddenly realized that there was a curved wooden bridge that spanned a large river. The river was jade green, but it was very shallow. The bridge was less than 100 feet long. There were 2 words carved on the body of the bridge: helpless. He could no longer see the endless smoke and the long bridge that he had walked for a long time. At that moment, a soul-reaping envoy brought Ain's spirit onto the bridge. He walked very slowly. On the other side of the bridge was a vast expanse of yellow dust. The Hell Dao was completely different from the human Dao, demonic beast Dao, Azura Dao, and even the hungry ghost Dao. It was mysterious and indescribable. The green-faced ghost shouted impatiently, "Hey, the one up there, come down quickly. When it's time, you'll get more merit if you continue to look." Li Qingshan walked down from the village viewing platform in a daze. The old man who had been fooled grabbed him. "Kid, return my spirit jade." Li Qingshan said perfunctorily, "I'll return it to you later." Oxhead Ah Pang felt strange. Does this kid also miss his hometown? The old man shouted, "Lord Horseface, please help me." "What are you howling for? Continue walking and take care of your things." Horseface sneered, "Good kid, let's see what you'll do next." Not long after they passed the village viewing platform, a tea house blocked their way. It was either built by the side of the road or blocked the main road. There were cliffs on both sides of the tea house. A long flag fluttered on a flagpole of the tea house with the word Teng written on it. An old woman with white hair and wrinkled skin sat at the door. She held a soup spoon in her hand and called out, "Come and have some soup." "Mengpa soup." Li Qingshan raised his head slightly. Based on the unlucky place that the tea house was built in, he knew that he had to drink this bowl of soup. He was slightly relieved when he did not see the merit box. He walked a little closer. However, he found something strange. There were 2 soup pots in front of Meng Pe, both of which were steaming. There were 2 piles of bowls, one big and one small. The mouth of the big bowl was chipped, and the black porcelain was gray. It was small and exquisite. White porcelain fighting colors. One pot of soup was as thick as asphalt and emitted an unpleasant smell of medicine. The other pot of soup was as light as plain water and emitted a refreshing fragrance. Meng Pe scooped out 2 bowls of clear soup from small white porcelain bowls and handed them to Oxhead and Horseface. "I've just used a 1,000-year-old hen to make soup. Have a taste." Horseface tasted it. "Granny Meng, your craftsmanship is still as good as ever, but the materials are getting more and more frugal. Not to mention 1,000 years, I don't think it'll even take 100 years. It's not easy to do business. Most of the customers are poor." Meng Pe said to Li Qingshan with a kind face, "Little brother, which bowl do you want to drink?" On the way, Li Qingshan had already heard from Oxhead that the effect of Meng Pe's soup was not to make one forget the past, but to seal all of one's cultivation. although it was the yang spirit and yin spirit. Once one drank this bowl of soup, one would be no different from a mortal and would not be able to use any magic. In such a state, once one entered the cycle of reincarnation, there would be a mystery in the womb, and one would definitely lose all memories of one's past life. However, Oxhead did not tell him that there were other choices, so he pointed at the pot of clear soup. "Little brother, you really know how to choose. After drinking this bowl of soup, you won't fall into hell. You won't forget the past." Meng Po's smile became even more kind, but she was not in a hurry to scoop up the soup. Instead, she reached out a chicken claw-like hand. Li Qingshan instantly understood that he had to buy that pot of clear soup. And it would definitely be expensive. It was probably one of the things that needed to be bribed the most. After drinking this bowl of clear soup, one would be able to maintain one's cultivation. Even if one was sent to hell, one would be able to cast spells to block it. Even if there were still mysteries in the womb during reincarnation, one could still preserve one's thoughts and memories. One could recover them in the future. It was definitely not a coincidence that Chu Tian was able to recover a portion of Lin Xian's memories. It was because he drank this bowl of Meng Po's soup. Even a bowl of clear water could be sold at a sky-high price, let alone soup. This stage was extremely important. It was a matter of life and death. It was definitely not something that a famous scenic spot like the village viewing platform could compare to. Furthermore, he had no choice at all. He had to drink it whether he wanted to or not. Seeing that Li Qingshan could not take it out after a long time, Meng Po's face gradually darkened. She put down the small white porcelain bowl and picked up the large black porcelain bowl. She scooped up a full bowl. Poor people only deserve to drink this. Sigh. People say that hell rewards the good and punishes the evil. I didn't expect that it would still favor the rich and despise the poor. Li Qingshan sighed bitterly and took the large black porcelain bowl. The smell became even more pungent, and bubbles were bubbling. There were insect-like things surging up. He did not know what disgusting things were cooking. Meng Po laughed sinisterly. "Don't look down on this bowl of soup. In terms of ingredients, it's even more expensive than this pot of soup. I guarantee that once you drink it, you won't be able to escape punishment and forget the past." She said sternly, "Drink it." Horseface sneered. "If you don't drink it, I can only force it down." Oxhead Abian laughed. "Heh, I'll pay for it myself. I can treat you to a few more bowls. There's no need for you to pay for it, big brother." Three faces stared at Li Qingshan. Some were stern, some were mocking, and some were sneering. Li Qingshan did not think that hell was scary, but he suddenly felt his heart palpitate. "All right, I'll drink it. I'll drink it." Seeing him pinch his nose and drink the bowl of soup with a distorted expression, Horseface could not help but laugh. "You won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. It's too late to regret now." Oxhead Abian sighed in his heart. On the road to hell, it was extremely simple for him to give Li Qingshan some treasures and let him bribe him. However, since he had chosen this path, he had to walk it this way. Otherwise, why would a smart person, who knew how to bribe people, repeatedly speak rudely and offend others? Li Qingshan gulped down the soup in one gulp. The soup melted in his mouth and fused with his yang spirit bit by bit. Immediately, he felt his entire body begin to feel numb. He continued to walk forward while swaying, his expression already extremely desperate. Meng Po was used to this kind of scene. She could not be bothered to look at this poor man and went to serve the next customer. Just when Li Qingshan passed by the pot of soup, a leg suddenly flew up and landed on the pot of soup. With a bang, the soup pot smashed against the rock wall and the soup spilled all over the ground. Even though Meng Po was a ghost immortal, she was caught off guard and cried out in pain, "My soup!" This pot of soup required a lot of precious ingredients to achieve the effect of sealing one's cultivation. Moreover, it was not easy to boil it. Li Qingshan let out a breath of resentment and raised his eyebrows with a smile. "Good soup," he said to the dumbfounded old man. "I'll return it to you." Meng Po's claw-like hands grabbed his neck fiercely and said sternly, "Return my soup." "All right." Li Qingshan smiled and patted his stomach. "When I'm done digesting it, I'll pee and let you use it as a mirror." I'll let you see how ugly your old face is. Mengpo was about to go crazy. I'll kill you. Alright, come, I beg you to give me a quick death. I'm not human if I don't kill you. Horseface was stunned for a while before asking Oxhead Abien, is there something wrong with this kid's head? Yes, he's quite sick. However, for some reason he only wanted to laugh out loud and vent his anger. Chapter 1540. Hell Dao, the first hall under King Qingguang's rule. The hall was towering and dark. Two giant ghosts stood outside the hall, holding iron chains and steel forks, looking ferocious and terrifying. In front of the hall, there was a mirror of sin. The platform was 10 feet tall, and the mirror had a circumference of 10. It was hung to the east, and there was a horizontal plaque on it. Appearance is born from the heart. All the souls of the dead were brought to the mirror of sin. The mirror of sin was also known as the mirror of karma, and it could reflect the sins of a person's life. If good was greater than evil, the mirror would emit light. If evil was greater than good, the mirror would be covered in black fog. If good and evil were balanced, it would be invisible, without light or fog. In the world, there were few good people, but many evil people. Even if they were good, who could really live a life without making mistakes? Hence, he said, there are no good people in front of the mirror of sin. The first hall was in charge of rewarding good and punishing evil. According to the difference between good and evil, they would be reincarnated as humans or demoted to beasts. Those who committed the most heinous crimes would be sent to the endless hell to be punished. However, there were so many souls of the dead. As a perfected immortal, King Qingguang would naturally not be entangled in such trivial matters. Unless human immortals and demon immortals were about to die, he would arrange for them to personally enter the hall. Hence, the main hall was not open all year round. There were 4 judges in charge of the 4 side halls, which were called Mirror of Light in Law, Reward of Kindness, and Punish of Evil. With a bang, a figure fell heavily into the mirror bureau. His head and face were covered in dirt, and he was in an extremely sorry state. Before he could crawl back up, a group of ferocious ghost messengers swarmed over him. Some twisted his arms, some pulled his head, and even dragged him into the hall. In front of the mirror hangs high signboard. A white-faced judge wearing a vermilion robe and a black gauze hat sat behind a high table. When he saw the situation, he frowned and was about to scold. Oxhead, Horseface, and Mengpo walked into the hall together. The ghost servants in the hall immediately fell silent. The white-faced judge hurriedly walked down from behind the table. "Fellow Taoists, what can I do for you?" Mengpo screamed, "This bastard ruined my pot of good soup." Horseface sneered, "He probably doesn't know what this place is." Oxhead said in a low voice, "This person needs to be severely punished." Magistrate Lu was also taken aback. What was the background of this brat? He had actually provoked 3 ghost immortals to complain about him together. Moreover, these 3 were the most impressive figures in the underworld Dao. Their statuses were even higher than his. Especially that Oxhead Apang. His strength was unfathomable, and his lifespan was extremely long. Besides the 10 kings of hell, no one would have to address him as Big Brother Ox. His mind raced and he coughed twice. I have to look at myself on the mirror of sin. The first trial. He had to give face to these 3, but before that he still had to plunder. He was a dignified ghost immortal, so how could he be ordered around? If he didn't have any benefits, what was he doing in the mirror bureau? Oxhead Abin's expression sank as he thought to himself, I knew that this Lu fellow was greedy, but I didn't expect him to be greedy to such an extent. These judges are really getting worse and worse. In the past, when the infernal realm had just been established, the judges were still fair and just. Later on, they all went to the pure land of ultimate bliss to cultivate. Who would be willing to try cases in this sinister and terrifying infernal world? Magistrate Lu cried out, Brother Nyo, you're a veteran of hell. These are the rules. Rules. What can I do about it? When I'm done with the case, I'll definitely give the 3 of you an explanation. The old man who came with Li Qingshan looked around outside the hall. Li Qingshan had spilled the pot of soup, so he pretended to be a poor man. Horseface was bribed by him, so he didn't expose him. Mengpo was in a hurry to take revenge, so she didn't have time to argue with him. She got a bowl of clear soup for free, but she saved a lot of merit. It was much more valuable than that spiritual jade. However, he wasn't a kind person, and he was famous for being narrow-minded. Seeing this scene, he only sneered, "Stupid kid, don't even think about passing the third stage." There were 3 gatekeepers in the infernal realm that needed to be bribed. The first was the 10 Directions in Marshals or soul-reaping envoys. If he couldn't bribe them, he would suffer a calamity on the way to the Yellow Springs. The second was the bowl of Mengpo's soup. If he didn't buy a bowl of clear soup, he would drink it. Everything would stop, and the past would be forgotten. He might not even be able to endure the torture of hell. The third gatekeeper was the 4 great judges, and it was also the most important one. It could reward good or punish evil with a single thought. If he wanted to atone for his sins and escape punishment, he would have to spend a lot of money. At this moment, one of the guards shouted, "Old man, what are you looking at?" He walked over with a water and fire rod in his hand. If it was any other day, the old man wouldn't care about such a kid and would kill him in one move. But now, he could only lower his voice and shove another spiritual jade over. The ghost guard's expression changed slightly, as if he was smiling, but it was still as ferocious as before. He patted his head. "You're a tactful one. When you're here, even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up, and even if you're a tiger, you'll have to lie down. Whatever yang spirit or yin spirit is useless. I see that you're so filial. Come in and take a look." The old man laughed dryly and followed him into the hall. Other than the 3 gatekeepers, he had to deal with the other ghost guards. Otherwise, the little ghosts are hard to deal with, would make him suffer. But in his heart, he hated Li Qingshan even more. "Why do I have to lower my voice, and yet you can be so arrogant? I want to see how you'll die." Magistrate Lu arrived behind the case again. A few menacing ghost envoys were just about to drag Li Qingshan onto the mirror of sin when Granny Meng sneered, "You with the surname Lu, stop wasting your efforts. This kid is a pauper." Poor ghost. Magistrate Lu was still not satisfied and asked, "Who are you? Are you filial?" Li Qingshan looked up and laughed. "My good son, are you filial to me?" The hall was silent. Whether it was the giant ghost in front of the hall or the ghost guards in the hall, they were all stunned. They had never seen such a rude and unreasonable person in Yen Luodian. Magistrate Lu was also stunned, as if he didn't expect someone to speak to him like this, and said angrily, "What did you say? Say it again? My good grandson, are you filial to me?" Another generation was demoted. Bang! Magistrate Lu slammed the table and stood up. He was furious. Immediately send him to the 3rd, 5th, no, 9th level of hell? The ferocious ghost guards swarmed him again. Some twisted his arms, some pulled his head, and dragged him out of the hall. Li Qingshan didn't struggle, nor did he curse or curse. He only looked deeply at Magistrate Lu, then glanced at the 4 words Mirror of Eminence, and couldn't help but smile, which turned into laughter. Even when he was dragged out of the hall, the mighty laughter still resounded in the hall. Magistrate Lu's heart palpitated for no reason. He really has no respect for the law, and is not a son. "My 3 friends, are you satisfied with this result?" Mengpa felt uneasy. She didn't feel the joy of victory, and said hatefully, "We should send him to the 18th level of hell, and let him never live again." Oxhead thought, if only that could be done. But things couldn't be so simple. Other than the 10th hall, Reincarnation Hall, the other 9 halls were each in charge of 2 levels of hell. Even if they were sent to the 9th level of hell, they had to endure through each level. And every level of hell had many small levels, in which there were countless painful tortures: climbing a mountain of knives, plunging into a pot of boiling oil, being stung by bees and bitten by snakes, and a river of pus and blood. Hence, it was called the Endless Hell. Kid, I hope you can hold on. To be continued. Chapter 1541. The scarlet flames were burning a large black pot, and the surrounding rock walls were scorched black. A few little ghosts were adding firewood to the fire. The pot was dozens of meters in diameter, like a small pond. It was filled with muddy yellow oil, and countless bubbles were churning. At this moment, a big indigo ghost appeared on the pitch-black rock wall. Its ghost claws lifted a person high and threw him into the pot of oil. With a splash, the oil splashed everywhere. There was a sizzling sound, and the oil churned violently. The little ghosts who were cooking the pot fled in panic, and accidentally got stained by a bit of oil. They wailed and rolled on the ground as if they were suffering great pain, and their stooped bodies were twisted. The indigo ghost laughed loudly, deriving great pleasure from the painful wails. This was not an ordinary pot of oil, but the little hell of the first level of hell. Ordinary people would die of pain even if they got stained by a bit of oil. But strangely, he did not hear any screams coming from the pot of oil. He looked down and his smile froze. The madman who roared at the mirror division and insulted the judge in public was actually swimming in a pot of oil? When Li Qingshan fell into the pot of oil, his expression was awe-inspiring, and he had a fearless spirit of sacrifice for the revolutionary cause. However, the oil around him was boiling violently, but he did not feel the slightest bit of pain. Could it be that I'm numb to the pain? Thus, he spread his arms and swam around in the pot, but as expected, he did not feel any pain. Although the oil was a little annoying, it was warm and smooth and a little comfortable. He swam several laps in one go from the beginning to the end, breaststroke, freestyle, butterfly, and dog paddle. The indigo ghost was dumbfounded, and the little ghosts who were cooking the pot were all dumbfounded. What are you doing here? Go away, don't block the way. At this moment, another big red ghost appeared on the rock wall. It impatiently pushed aside the indigo ghost and threw another person into the pot of oil. Li Qingshan smiled when he saw that person. You're here too. The person who came was the old man who had come with him. As soon as the old man fell into the pot of oil, his expression changed drastically. His entire body was trembling. When he saw Li Qingshan, he gritted his teeth and his expression was distorted. It was really painful and hateful. He was filled with hatred. Killing intent rose in his heart and he immediately felt the pain increase. He hurriedly circulated his magic power and focused his mind. He squeezed out a sentence from the gaps of his teeth. You harmed me. It turned out that after Magistrate Lu had interrogated Li Qingshan, next was the old man. He had already prepared a generous gift, so he didn't even need to go up to the mirror of sin. Mengpo was still in the hall. She looked at him and said, "This is also a poor ghost." He was speechless. How would he dare to tell a ghost immortal who was in a rage, "I was lying to you just now"? As a result, he was escorted onto the mirror of sin by the infernal servants. This move wasn't a big deal. The mirror was covered in thick black fog, and there was almost no light at all. It was obvious that he had sinned heavily. In his original world, he was a great devil cultivator whose name shook the world. His favorite hobby was to use living souls to refine magic treasures. Massacring cities and destroying countries was nothing difficult for him, and he was known as the soul-snatching old monster. After he ascended to the mortal realm, he restrained himself a little, but he was definitely not a good person. Magistrate Lu was also at the peak of his anger. With a wave of his pen, he was sent to the 10th level of hell, one level deeper than Li Qingshan. He had bitterness that he couldn't express, and he couldn't give his gift. Being in such a situation, how could he not hate Li Qingshan? You're such an unreasonable old man, what did I do to harm you? Li Qingshan's mind changed. He roughly guessed the reason and laughed, you deserve it. He spread his arms and leaned against the side of the pot of oil. He shouted at the two big ghosts on the rock wall, what are you two idiots looking at? The oil is too cold. The old man's face turned green, and his face twitched. The two big ghosts were also stunned for a moment, probably because they had never heard of such a request. They shouted at the little ghosts who were cooking the pot, light the fire, light the fire. The little ghosts who were cooking the pot quickly raised the fire, and the oil in the pot boiled even more violently. Li Qingshan still didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. He then looked at the old man whose face was distorted and body was trembling. Tiskizi, you look like fried dough sticks. Are you really in pain? You're not pretending, are you? I want you To die a horrible death. Li Qingshan laughed out loud. Aren't we already dying a horrible death now? The old man was speechless. He loved to extract the souls of his enemies and torture them, but was there a better place to torture a person than hell? If I kill this brat now, I'll be helping him to free himself. That magistrate Liu will definitely vent his anger on me. Adding one more crime is already a light punishment, but if my cultivation is sealed, then it's all over. He glared at Li Qingshan with eyes that wanted to eat him alive, but there was nothing he could do. The pot of oil became hotter and hotter, and the pain became more and more intense. Then he looked at Li Qingshan whistling, as if he was taking a bath. The old man instantly felt the pain increase by several times, and he almost couldn't help but scream. He pointed at Li Qingshan and shouted at the two big ghosts, "This is not fair, why is he fine?" Li Qingshan rested his head on the edge of the pot and looked at the strange blue night sky. "Please add a little more fire, yes, this is the temperature." He let out a comfortable moan, dipped his head into the oil, and muttered to himself, "Maybe it's because I'm a good person." He had experienced the pain of hell from Gu Yenying, and frankly speaking, it was an unbearable pain that far exceeded the limit of pain he could feel. Logically speaking, now that he was sent to hell, the pain he felt should be even more intense, but he was fine. Judging from the old man's reaction, there was no problem with the pot of oil, so the problem was with him or the sky above him. Looking back at the knowledge of the 6 paths of reincarnation, the Naraka path was the most important part of the 6 paths of reincarnation. It could be said that without hell, there would be no reincarnation. The laws of heaven and earth seem to have some very mysterious characteristics. Whether it was the Yellow Springs Road that led to countless worlds and countless places, or the bridge of helplessness that could not be distinguished from each other, or even the hometown viewing platform that allowed him to see his hometown in his previous life, they were all incredible and could not be guessed with common sense. He had a vague guess, but even he was not sure. Am I a good person? Yes, of course I'm not a bad person, but... He closed his eyes as if he had fallen asleep. On the battlefield of the demon domain, he once led the army to charge, killed countless demon folk, and finally faced the demon god alone. In the world of the 5 regions, he once spread martial arts, so that everyone has skills, and broke the rule of those sects and aristocratic families. In the world of 9 regions, he once destroyed the world and saved the common people. Am I a good person? The indigo big ghost hurried back to the bright mirror department. Judge Liu was chatting with the 3 ghost immortals. He said unhappily, "Why did you only report now? How is that kid?" "Your Excellency, that kid, what are you hesitating for? Say it quickly." "Reporting to Your Excellency, he fell asleep." "Fell asleep?" Judge Liu doubted his ears. "He didn't struggle or beg for mercy?" "No, he doesn't seem to be in pain at all." "Could it be?" Judge Liu's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at the mirror of sin, as well as the 4 large words, "born from the heart, above." Horseface said solemnly, "That kid is more good than evil." The mirror of sin was just a manifestation of the laws of hell, convenient for Judge Yama to pass judgment. Even if it was not a reflection, there was still a distinction between good and evil. Oxhead A. Pang suddenly recalled that a long, long time ago, when he established the Naraka path, the purpose was born from the heart, and the realm was created from the heart. In the cycle of karma, good and evil were rewarded. His heart brightened. Despicable villain, shameless villain, how could he be chosen by the leader? He gained some hope. Mengpa shrieked, "No, we can't let him go." Chapter 1542. The indigo ghost used a steel fork to fish Li Qingshan out of the pot of oil and sent him to the depths of hell to be dealt with. As soon as he got out of the pot of oil, he went up the mountain of knives. Thousands of blades gathered together, gleaming coldly. When Li Qingshan saw this, he smiled and said, "Good place." He let out another long sigh, but he thought of the frenzied flower saber at the end of the road. "Do you know fear now?" The indigo ghost grinned and pushed Li Qingshan towards the mountain of knives. Then he stared with his eyes wide open, only to see Li Qingshan strolling on the mountain of knives with his hands behind his back. He did not look like an evil ghost sent to hell, but more like a tourist on a hike. The thousands of blades could not hurt him at all. The indigo ghost hurried to report. Magistrate Liu was even more furious. He slammed the gavel and said, "Trash." He grabbed a token and smashed it on the indigo ghost's head. "Continue. There's no need to report anymore. If he doesn't suffer, just go to the next level." The indigo ghost picked up the token and turned back to the small hell. He was also extremely angry, but he did not dare to resent a magistrate. He grabbed Li Qingshan and left, saying fiercely, "Kid, do you really think you can escape punishment just because you have done a few good deeds?" Li Qingshan smiled. "As I expected, I didn't expect this hell to be somewhat fair." "Fair?" The indigo ghost smiled cruelly. "I want you to know that this is the most unfair place in the world." Li Qingshan glanced at him and saw the marks on his head and face. "I think you are also an unlucky ghost." The indigo ghost was furious. "Shut up." Then, Li Qingshan visited the copper axe hell and the iron tree hell. The copper axe could not hurt him, and the iron tree could not hurt him. In the hunger hell, his stomach was full, and in the thirst hell, his mouth was full. In the black cloud sand hell, there was only a cool breeze. In the dung mud hell, there was only a pool of clear water. The poisonous bees did not sting him, and the poisonous snakes did not pester him. He was not afraid of being cut open, and he was not afraid of being eaten by crows. At first, the indigo ghost's expression became more and more ferocious, but later on, it gradually became more serious, and a trace of respect appeared on its face. After serving in hell for so many years, he had seen countless evil spirits and ghosts. When they were in extreme pain, there were many who cursed the judge, the Een commander, or even the Yama king Ksitigarbha, but they had never seen such a calm prisoner. It was as if he wasn't walking towards the depths of hell, but towards paradise. From start to finish, there was not the slightest bit of hatred or despair. Furthermore, he didn't receive any punishment even though he was in such a deep hell. It was clear that he had accumulated a lot of merit. "For you," Li Qingshan replied smugly, "is it important? Don't be too complacent. Even if they have great merits, don't tell me they don't have any sins." Li Qingshan sighed and said, "My sins are too numerous to list. Even 10,000 deaths cannot atone for it." Under his will, the void-swallowing beast devoured countless worlds, causing countless people to lose their homes and countless living beings to be annihilated. As for the world of the 5 continents, he had allowed everyone to cultivate, but it had also brought about several hundred years of chaos. Countless martial artists and cultivators had appeared out of nowhere, fighting for supremacy in the heavenly sea, bringing about more than just legends. The indigo ghost was stunned and sized him up. He felt that he couldn't see through him. If he was a demonic cultivator who did all kinds of evil, how could he have accumulated so much merit? If what you said is true, then you're finished. If you go deeper into hell, as long as you have a trace of sin, you won't be able to escape punishment. At that time, the deeper the sin, the greater the pain. Unknowingly, his tone was no longer gloating, but rather a little emotional. "Isn't that exactly what you want? I have no enmity with you. What do I want? I feel that it's not worth it for you. Your merit is far greater than your sins. You're not on the same side as those damned demonic cultivators and evil spirits. Just pay the money honestly and pass. Why bother? Who said there's no justice here? Don't you have it in your heart?" Li Qingshan smiled. "If you have this thought, I might spare your life in the future." "Spare my life?" The indigo ghost laughed loudly. He was already in such a situation. Did he still want to escape from this hell? However, under Li Qingshan's gaze, he gradually could not laugh anymore. Instead, he felt rather terrified. Li Qingshan urged, "Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up." Soon after, they arrived at the 6th level of hell, a small ant-devouring hell. Li Qingshan frowned and began to feel slight pain. Although the pain was not very deep, it was unbearable and made him restless. For some reason, he thought back to his time in Crouching Ox Village. It was not a beautiful childhood, but a time when he was trapped in the body of a child. In a small village, he was often abused by his brother and sister-in-law. He slept in a pile of hay in the cowshed for many years, and he was often bitten by mosquitoes. He could not sleep at all times, and he could only talk to oxen. You know it's painful. Yes, it's very painful. Then you just have to endure it. The indigo ghost sat down in a corner. He had been sent by Magistrate Lu to deal with Li Qingshan. Originally, after being scolded by Magistrate Lu, he vented his anger on Li Qingshan. He was prepared to ruthlessly send him to the depths of hell, but he changed his mind unknowingly. He felt that it was enough to do this task perfunctorily. There was no need to stand up for Lu. Li Qingshan nodded and closed his eyes, silently enduring the biting. He knew very well that the test had just begun. It was already lucky to be able to make it through the first few levels, but that was as far as he could go. There were no good people in front of the mirror of sin, and there was no paradise in the path of hell. Without going through thousands of hardships and suffering, how could he reach the depths of hell and meet that great sage, and then above the 9 heavens and meet Brother Ox? He suspected that the soup of Mengpa actually had the opposite effect. It did not make people forget, but it made people remember. It was 100 times more effective than the water of recollection. In a trance, he was still in the pile of hay in the cowshed, facing oxen with its broken horn. It was looking at him with its moist eyes, silently waiting for him to make a choice. For an ordinary human emperor, the yang spirit was basically everything. It was the condensation of the soul, spirit, magic power, and cultivation. However, he who cultivated the 9 transformations of demons and gods could simply abandon the yang spirit and then condense it again in the small world. He could still make a choice. He could choose not to suffer this pain and choose a path. It was not that he did not have a way out. The 5 continents world was his best way out. The 5 continents world had already grown into a super large world. In the near future, it would be able to accommodate existences that had undergone 5 heavenly tribulations. And as the god of the world, as long as he hid in the 5 continents world, he could coexist with heaven and earth. Even immortals could not do anything to him. It was really like, take a step back and you can see the world. Everything was there, so why should he suffer in this hell? At this moment, an ant crawled on his eyelid, and he suddenly pinched it. The indigo great ghost thought, finally can't take it anymore? This was already the 6th level of hell. It was different from the initial mountain of knives and frying pan of oil. It touched upon a deeper level of laws. There was no need for some little ghost to sharpen his knife. The various manifestations were born from the heart, and the realm was created from the heart. These ants could not escape at all. There was no way to kill them all. No matter how they struggled, they would definitely be bitten. Li Qingshan gently released the ant and opened his eyes. Let's continue. What did you say? Let's go to the next level. There's nothing interesting here. Is there something wrong with your head? I appreciate your kind intentions, but let's continue. Li Qingshan's eyes shone, and his expression was stubborn. From the moment he stepped out of Crouching Ox Village, he had made up his mind not to look back. There was no path of retreat to speak of, whether it was a village or a world. Chapter 1543. In the quiet room, Lu Tian felt very troubled. Eldest senior brother had died in his place for no reason. How could he explain this? Could he tell others that eldest senior brother courted death himself and was captured by Oxhead Ah Pang and brought to hell? Others would definitely think that he had used some scheme to make Li Qingshan a scapegoat. He could not bear the crime of murdering eldest senior brother. If Chao Tianjiao heard about this, how could he let him off? Moreover, he had a feeling that if he told her everything, the strange behavior of Oxhead Ah Pang, the vortex of fate that he saw, and the terrifying tribulation of heaven and earth, the outcome would only be worse. He was smart, but at this time, he was helpless and did not know what to do. He could only sit opposite Li Qingshan. After an unknown period of time, he suddenly realized that the corners of Li Qingshan's mouth twitched. He frowned and revealed a pained expression. It was as if he had sunk into a nightmare and could not wake up. His body trembled slightly. In the depths of hell, snow flew everywhere. The cold air was oppressive, bones were cold, and teeth could not help but chatter. Countless tall icebergs connected to the ice sky. The sky was filled with frozen clouds, and everything was cold and white. Everywhere was cold and white. However, in the green and white glacier, there were countless red shadows that intertwined like corals. He blinked hard and brushed away the frost on his eyelids. He realized that they were frozen flames, balls of dead fire. The coldness deepened. His clothes had long been torn and peeled off, revealing his majestic chest. His skin was frozen and cracked. Blood had already solidified inside and did not flow out. It was like the dead fire in the glacier, but also like lotus flowers, red and enchanting. This was the depths of hell. In the increasing pain, he gradually forgot to count how many layers there were, and only numb endurance was left. The indigo ghost hid far away outside the glacier and sighed with some pity. This is the end. This hell of 8 cold and 8 heat was the graveyard of countless evil spirits. When they were completely numb, they would be completely frozen and then stay here forever, until one day, they would be blown into ice by the cold wind. Or they would be burned to ashes by the wildfire. He could not help but wish again. All right, let's stop here. This was hell. Giving up all hope, death was the best ending. However, Li Qingshan was unwilling to give up hope. Unwilling to stop, he continued forward. His bare feet stepped on the hard frozen ground, as if he was stepping on countless sharp blades. The red lotuses around him bloomed even bigger, and wisps of cold air penetrated into his body. Instead, he felt much more clear-headed. He chose the furthest glacier and strode forward. The chilly wind froze his eyes, turning them into 2 gray balls of ice. However, his footsteps did not have the slightest bit of hesitation. He had already clearly outlined the appearance of the ice mountain in his mind, and he continued forward until he ran between the glaciers. Swallowing the cold wind all the way, eating ice and drinking snow, falling and climbing up if he could see, he would find that the glacier was still out of reach, not even a step closer. Perhaps he didn't care. It looked like he just didn't want to stop. An indescribable feeling welled up in the indigo ghost's heart as it asked, "Why bother?" Li Qingshan's eardrums had long been frozen, so he couldn't hear anything. He didn't have to listen to the mournful sound of the wind, so he just waved his strong and powerful arms and strode forward with his long and strong legs. Stepping over the hard frozen ground, he stepped onto a vast frozen lake. A gust of wind blew away the snow on the surface of the ice, and countless dead flames froze beneath his feet, dazzling like coral. Suddenly, with a crack, the frozen lake split apart, forming a long valley of ice. He couldn't hear or see, nor did he have any magic power. He fell into the ice valley defenselessly. The frozen dead flames suddenly came to life, dancing wildly like fire snakes, warming his cold body. The temperature continued to rise, and he sweated until there was not a single drop of water on him. Then, he was burned to ashes inch by inch, and before he fell to the bottom of the valley, he was blown away by the hot wind. The indigo ghost was looking into the distance, and he completely understood one thing. He hadn't been overwhelmed by the pain, and he wouldn't stop here. Soon, he was reborn from the ashes, and trembled in the cold wind. His flesh bloomed with red lotuses again, and before his eyeballs froze, he took a deep look at the furthest glacier, and began a new round of running. Eldest senior brother, eldest senior brother. Letian tried to wake Li Qingshan up. Not long after, Li Qingshan's eyelashes trembled slightly, and he slowly opened his eyes. As expected, he woke up. He looked at Letian, and his eyes were filled with smoke, as if a lifetime had passed. There was still the reflection of the glacier in his eyes, and his lips trembled as he asked, "How long has it been?" 3 days. Only 3 days? Li Qingshan felt that many years had passed. He believed that this was not just an illusion caused by the pain, but the laws of hell at work. Not only could he not stay out of it, but it also made this trip to hell even more difficult. Because the pain he experienced in an instant was the superposition of many days in hell. Although he woke up, the nightmare continued. Ice and fire constantly intertwined, and the flesh that was frozen and cracked in the cold turned to ashes in the heat. It kept going and he suffered endlessly. Eldest senior brother, Lu Tian immediately understood. His yang spirit was still in hell, enduring all sorts of torture. Li Qingshan pressed down on his knees and propped himself up with difficulty. He swatted away Lu Tian's hand that wanted to support him and made his way out the door. When he pushed open the door, he turned around. "Don't tell anyone." His gaze drifted about, and his voice was tired and weak. It was not threatening at all. However, Lu Tian felt a great pressure, as if he was facing fate itself. He lowered his head deeply. "Yes, sir." The corner of Li Qingshan's lips twitched. He seemed to smile. "Thanks." He vanished through the door. Phew! Lu Tian exhaled deeply and collapsed on the ground. Li Qingshan staggered into the dark nether dwelling. With a great splash, he fell into the water heavily. He used the spirit turtle transformation and suppressed all of his feelings. Only then did he manage to recover a sliver of rationality. "No, I can't maintain this state for too long. I have to go to Ruin's End as soon as possible." His willpower far surpassed that of regular people, but it was not limitless. Once it exceeded the limits of what he could endure, he would go completely mad or even die. Before that, he had to make a choice as soon as possible and completely sever the connection between his main body and his yang spirit, or he would definitely collapse. There was an extremely great risk hidden within this. Once he lost control of his yang spirit, it was possible for it to completely split apart. It could even become an enemy of his main body in an attempt to replace him. That would be a terrifying opponent who grasped all of his secrets. This was nothing new in the world of cultivation. As a result, many cultivators condensed a second or third soul nascence, followed by multiple yin and yang spirits. Although it could greatly increase their cultivation speed and make them invincible in battle, it had always been a taboo, something that the orthodox path of cultivation did not accept. However, Li Qingshan was not worried. Instead, he felt like this was for the best. Ruin's End might be even more dangerous and unpredictable than the Naraka realm. If he failed, at least there would be a sliver of hope for him to continue forward. As a result, he activated the formation he had prepared a long time ago. In that instant, deep blue light shone, and a whirlpool appeared on the surface of the water. It gradually expanded and deepened until it formed a black hole in the depths of the sea. The water level rapidly plummeted, sucked into the hole. It had to be mentioned that the bottom of the dwelling was connected to the ocean. The water level was level with the ocean. The black hole sucked away who knew how many tons of water in a single moment. This was all water to Ruin's End. Without any hesitation, he leapt into the huge whirlpool. Before he was swallowed up by the black hole, he and the yang spirit in the hell of oblivion chanted at the same time. "Good luck." To be continued. Chapter 1544. In the Hungry Ghost realm, Little and was currently cultivating in Blooming City. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and discovered in shock that his connection with Li Qingshan had been completely severed. He had even lost contact with the skull prayer beads he had placed on him. He immediately stopped cultivating and returned to his dwelling. He picked up a fragment of a shattered formation and looked at the rapidly rising water level. He immediately understood that Li Qingshan had already gone to Ruin's End. He could not help but frown. Something major must have happened, or he would not have left without saying goodbye. He stared at the gloomy, deep seawater and intertwined his fingers. "You have to come back. I will be waiting for you no matter how long it takes, until death separates us." In that moment, all of the pain vanished, as well as all of the colors and sounds. Submerged in the boundless black water, perhaps because of the spirit turtle transformation, he did not feel cold at all. Instead, he felt warm, like a wanderer who had gone through all the hardships in a foreign land returning to the homeland of his dreams. Phew! Having distanced himself from the ice and fire of hell, he could not help but exhale deeply. The feeling was far too difficult to endure. If he had a choice, he would not even be willing to endure it for a second. He even began to wonder, I wonder if the me in hell can endure it? A cold thought flashed through his head, if I can endure it, then I'll live. If I can't, then I'll die. His rationality, which had almost descended into madness from the pain, rapidly recovered. He was calmer than ever before, just like the boundless black water around him. He extended his head out of the turtle shell. It was like a dragon's head, yet also like a lion's head. He turned his head left and right, observing his surroundings, but he could not see or hear anything. He did not encounter the pressure and rejection he was expecting. The world transformed from the primordial spirit turtle did not seem to hold any hostility towards him, a spirit turtle with an impure bloodline at all. The black water wrapped around him gently, which instead made him feel very comfortable and safe. Compared to the chaos of the mortal world and the agony of hell, this place was basically heaven. This was the homeland of the spirit turtle. His bloodline was not pure enough. But after using the spirit turtle transformation, it was 70 to 80% pure at the very least. Maybe that spirit sovereign Guihai was just trying to scare me. But where am I supposed to find that prisoner of ruin's end? Li Qingshan extended his limbs. Swaying lightly, he dived down. Wherever he went, the black water automatically parted without any resistance. After diving for an unknown amount of time, he was still surrounded by boundless black water. There wasn't a speck of dust or a mayfly in sight. He used mystic light illumination. With the improvement of the spirit turtle transformation, this innate ability could easily illuminate 500 kilometers away. However, he quickly retracted his divine ability because wherever the profound light shone, there was only black water. He didn't even need to use his eyes here, let alone his innate divine powers, because there was nothing to see. At least there were stars shining in the endless void, and each star was a world. There was also the existence of the void-devouring beasts. Each one of them was the embryonic form of a world. Even though it was a bit scary, at least it was not as boring. He swam for an unknown amount of time. He couldn't wait for a strange deep-sea beast to come and fight with him. He could not help but recite a poem, Sinkhole's End, You are all water. Oh, Qingshan, you have 4 legs. He suddenly realized something. Perhaps he was not diving deep, but rising. Because of the existence of the earth, no matter how deep the ocean, there would always be a bottom. But in this sinkhole's end, there was neither earth nor sky, so there was neither up nor down. The depths of hell and the depths of the sinkhole sounded similar. But they were not the same thing. At least hell has a floor, I just have to go straight down. But which part of this is considered deep? Not only could he not determine up or down, because there was no point of reference, he could not even distinguish north from south. No matter which direction he went, there was only endless black water. Then where should he go? He could not help but fall into deep thought. As he thought, he yawned and suddenly felt very tired. Perhaps it was because enduring that hellish torture had used up too much of his willpower. Sleepiness spread like a tide, drowning him in the blink of an eye. Even the hard turtle shell seemed to be a little soft. He had never felt so tired, even when he was reborn as a baby. He shook his head and tried to stay awake, but he could not help but think, maybe I should sleep for a while. Just a little. He retracted his head and limbs back into the shell, and his eyelids gradually closed. Only a turtle shell was left in the black water, neither floating nor sinking. It was as if a voice was saying to him, "Child, take a rest, you are too tired. You are home, it is very safe here, no one can hurt you anymore." I am home. In a trance, he thought of the misty clouds on the village viewing platform, the seemingly fake but real hometown in the endless distance, and the 2 familiar faces that were growing older by the day. He could not help but say softly, "Dad, Mom, how are you? I miss you so much." He could not help but retract his body deeper into the turtle shell, feeling a pain that he had not felt in a long time. Compared to any punishment in hell, it was insignificant, but it easily broke through all his defenses, like a needle piercing his heart. When he first came to this world, he suffered this kind of pain every night, and it was not easy to break free. He thought he had forgotten everything, but it turned out that he had not. As a result, he came to a realization. What made him tired was not just the torture of hell, but everything he had experienced after coming to this world. As his thoughts flowed, various scenes flashed through the turtle shell on his back. Everything from the past was vivid in his mind, quietly replaying in the black water. The struggle for survival when he was a child, the killing in the Jianghu when he was young, and when he grew up and stepped onto the path of cultivation, the killing became more and more intense, turning into war. The war between gods and demons in his heart never stopped. Pride, humiliation, hatred, fury, fear, slaughter. Even when he was singing and drinking, his heart was stretched taut. After he finished singing and sobered up, he had to hurry to cultivate and fight. He could not stop because once he stopped, he would feel tired. He would want to rest and enjoy himself, and he would probably not want to go forward anymore. However, no matter how long he tried, he only seemed to sink deeper. He had already become so powerful, becoming the first senior brother of the myriad phenomenon sect, standing above all living beings. He was countless times more powerful than the sallow and skinny young man from Crouching Ox Village. Not only did he not get a chance to catch his breath, but he was also faced with many difficulties, and the path became even more dangerous. The tortures of hell, the black water of Ruin's End, the enemies he could not defeat, and the blood oath he could not escape from. He had hope in despair, and he had to fight in desperate situations. Just what was the meaning of a life like this? Beyond the 9 heavens? Brother Ox's enemies can cut off one of his horns and suppress all the great saints. Even if I reach beyond the 9 heavens and fight alongside him, how useful can I be? After all, I'm just a mortal, whatever, I don't want to think so much. I'll just sleep. I'll think about it when I wake up. At this moment, he vaguely heard a familiar voice, echoing repeatedly in his heart, "You have to come back. You have to come back." A pale white face appeared on the turtle shell. She was handsome and dressed in silk. She was only around 6 or 7 years old. Just like him, she had lost her home, and even her life had been taken away. He had once shed tears for her, and he had sworn to take her back to her home. That was actually the home he wanted to return to. However, she did not choose to go back. Instead, she abandoned everything and continued forward with him. In an instant, her face appeared on every piece of the turtle shell. There was both the past and the present. There was white bone, and there was also a beautiful face. All of them were close. That was his only family in this world, little and... No. I can't sleep yet. She's still waiting for me. He opened his eyelids that felt like they weighed a ton and did his best to break free from his drowsiness. He felt a lingering fear. Just now, if he fell asleep, he would sleep for over a century at the very least, and everything would be over. By the time he woke up, he might have already reached the 9th layer of the spirit turtle transformation, but he would have become a pure spirit turtle. He would no longer have any ambition to go beyond the 9 heavens. Even when he was subjected to the torture of hell, he had never become so weak. The pain only sharpened his fighting spirit, while the nothingness of Ruin's End constantly ate away at his will. It was not exactly hostility, but it was even more terrifying than hostility. No, perhaps this was the deepest form of hostility. The hostility of the world also required a certain object to rely on. For example, the hungry ghost realm needed a ghost immortal to deal with little n. However, there was only the silent black water and boundless nothingness in Ruin's End. There was nothing to rely on. The reason why it was so mysterious and terrifying was because Ruin's End constantly assimilated all external objects into itself. If they possessed the bloodline of a spirit turtle, perhaps they could be assimilated into a spirit turtle, but if they were any other race, they would be obliterated in nothingness. As he possessed the bloodline of a spirit turtle, the assimilation was even deeper. Fatigue continued to surge over him like the tide. The nothingness seeped into his bones through the black water. He gritted his teeth and circulated his powers, releasing a ring of resplendent light. It expanded silently in the black water, only gradually dimming after reaching over 50 kilometers away. He hoped that the prisoner of Ruin's End could see it. However, in the boundless black water, the light was so tiny that it was not even comparable to a firefly. It was quickly swallowed by the darkness again. He unfurled his limbs and swam forward. He had to move forward no matter what. Afterwards, he released the light again. It was even more dazzling than last time, but against the backdrop of deep darkness, it seemed even dimmer for some reason, like a weak twinkling star. He constantly moved forward, flashing time and time again. Perhaps it was not so that anyone could see it, but so that he could illuminate himself in the deepest darkness and fight against nothingness. If the world was pitch black, then he would shine by himself. Even if hope did not exist, as long as he gazed at this star, he could continue forward. Chapter 1545. Good luck. In the depths of hell, between the glaciers, there was a wish. He severed the last connection and fell completely into hell. In an instant the pain eased a lot. His mind broke free from the numbness and he reconsidered his situation. For ordinary cultivators, the yang spirit was essentially formed from the soul and the condensation of a lifetime's cultivation. Everyone had a soul. After qi refinement cultivation and successful foundation establishment, they could condense a golden core, then a nascent soul, a yin spirit, a yang spirit, a primordial spirit, until they became perfected immortals. The cultivation world had always valued the soul and looked down on the body. Buddhists even regarded the body as a stinking bag. Even if the body was destroyed, the soul could still be reincarnated. Cultivators with the yin spirit and yang spirit could even be reborn through possession. When one reached the primordial spirit realm, it did not matter even if he did not have a body. It was just that his status was not comparable to that of a human immortal. However, if his soul was destroyed, everything would be over. Because of Li Qingshan's cultivation of the 9 transformations of demons and gods, especially after refining the small world in his body, it didn't matter even if his yang spirit was completely destroyed. His soul would naturally gather in the small world. All he needed to do was make a copy of his life experience in the small world. Although the two of them had lost contact, they still had the same experiences, emotions, thoughts, and fate because the information they had was completely the same. Therefore, there was no question of, who am I? He was Li Qingshan. It did not matter who was real or fake. All that mattered was who was stronger or weaker. I have Oxhead Pang as a guide. With Brother Ox's arrangements, it at least proves that there is a chance of this path. But the ultimate is uncertain. That 9-tailed fox, Sumi Rao, as a guide is terrible. Maybe it's a dead end. Therefore, I have to prepare for the worst. I can't return from the ultimate. I have to recultivate the 9 transformations of demons and gods and continue on the path to the 9 heavens. No, this is not the worst situation. Although I am a good guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes, it does not mean that I will not betray the revolution. But it doesn't mean that they won't betray the revolution. Once that happens, I must destroy them with my own hands. He was constantly destroyed and reborn between ice and fire. His thoughts were as cruel and resolute as ice and fire. Even if the enemy in front of him was himself, he would still kill him. I hope, my boy, will not disappoint me. Li Qingshan slowed down and continued to walk towards the glacier in the distance. His footsteps became more determined. He had never placed his hopes on anyone, not even his other self. Perhaps the will to self-destruct had never completely disappeared. It was only to carry out the will of the self. The indigo ghost looked over from afar, his heart trembling. It felt like some indescribable change had taken place in his body. After looking carefully for a while, he suddenly realized that he was approaching the iceberg in the distance. Although he didn't walk very fast. But he was indeed getting closer step by step. What happened? Unknowingly, differences had already arisen. They were all Li Qingshan, but they were no longer the same Li Qingshan. Different environments would have a great impact on people. The ultimate and hell were 2 completely opposite environments. Even in the same environment, there would still be differences. Whether it was the yin spirit or the yang spirit, they would definitely be affected by the physical body, just like mortals would be affected by all kinds of desires. But the physical body was a kind of shackle and also a kind of maintenance. Ghosts were the easiest to be distorted. This was also the case for powerful cultivators. If Chao Tianjiao didn't have a physical body, she would definitely be devoured and assimilated by the power of the black tortoise. It would be impossible for her to survive the sixth heavenly tribulation. The pros and cons were hard to describe, but one thing was certain. The stronger the physical body, the deeper the impact. Li Qingshan had all kinds of god-fiend bloodlines. Each bloodline contained a strong will. Although they formed a certain balance with each other, the impact on the Yang spirit was still very deep. And now, this influence was gradually disappearing, like the sunset glow of dusk dimming bit by bit. When he suddenly looked back, it was already night. If he cultivated the same cultivation method and walked the same path, he might be able to bridge this difference. But he cultivated the Book of Freedom and the 9 transformations of demons and gods, which were completely different cultivation methods. Even he himself couldn't predict what the consequences would be. Under these circumstances, the differences would only grow deeper and deeper for regular cultivators. The end result would definitely lead to a split, forming completely different paths. Since Li Qingshan had already treated himself as an imaginary enemy and was prepared to accept the worst outcome, he obviously did not care about a split. Instead, he felt very at ease. He even had the time to admire the magnificent iceberg and the magnificent death fire. He was still unable to use any of his powers, but the iceberg in the distance was no longer so unreachable. As he advanced, he deduced the reason behind this. He had a vague guess. During his 20-odd years in heaven, he had read through all the records, especially the knowledge related to the Book of Freedom. He had used the spirit turtle transformation to carry out an in-depth analysis. At the same time, he had quite a lot of conversations with Spirit Sovereign Guhai. The old turtle was still very attentive to matters related to the heavenly scripture of all. He was the first person to cultivate the heavenly scripture of freedom. He did not have the experience of others to reference, so he had to put everything into practice himself. According to the research of the 2 turtles, the heavenly scripture of freedom might be different from other heavenly scriptures. It might even be the exact opposite. He had to abandon his body at critical moments and voluntarily choose to disintegrate so that he could break free from this stinking skin. Otherwise, he would not be able to attain true, great freedom. His comprehension of the Tao of freedom had already reached an extremely high level many years ago, even before the battle of the demon domain. However, after condensing his Yang soul again, he had not made any progress in the past few years. This was very likely the reason. However, this was just a deduction at the end of the day. No cultivator would willingly abandon their body. Without a body, it was very easy for them to go crazy and suffer from chi deviation. Even after undergoing 6 heavenly tribulations, the status of undead immortals was nowhere close to that of human immortals. If Chao Tianjiao had failed to protect her body back then, she probably would not even have been able to become the head of the 6 tribulations. It was even more impossible for him to abandon his body. The 9 transformations of the demonic and divine held much greater significance to him than the heavenly scripture of freedom. He had also been focused on the spirit turtle transformation the entire time, so he had no time to test this theory. However, the affairs of the world were unpredictable. His current state was no different from disintegrating. There was not even a single connection between his Yang soul and his body. Blessings were always accompanied by misfortunes, and misfortunes were always accompanied by blessings. This separate trip could also be an opportunity for them. My strength is far greater than mine. If they betray the revolution, I really won't be my opponent. However, if I can refine a soul and become a human immortal, I'll be able to compete with me. He not bad. To be continued. P.S. Chapter 1546. In the Silent Ruins End, Li Qingshan foresaw this malice. He understood his own temperament. His stubbornness and arrogance would probably become even more violent once he lost the restraints of the body of a demonic god. He had never understood himself as he did now. In the home of the spirit turtle, his ability to think had become extraordinarily powerful, reaching an unbelievable level. Ordinary people could only observe the undulations above the surface of the sea when faced with the tremendous amount of information in their memories. Only when they thought deeply about certain things could they delve below the surface of the sea and gain insight into part of their memories, but there were unavoidably limitations. This limitation protected humans from mental breakdowns. If they saw an apple fall to the ground and immediately thought of gravity, countless formulas and laws, the contents of several books would surge out at the same time. Their brains would explode with a bang. As a result, the human mind was more like a flashlight, constantly shining around in the darkness. Then, they would forcefully piece together a complete picture from the blurry afterimages. It was inevitable that they would be filled with a lot of imagination. The more blurry and distant the memories were, the more fake and distorted they were. Those beautiful childhoods, those lost histories, were constantly tampered with by wishful thinking. Reality would forever sink into the darkness. Furthermore, this flashlight was always the hardest to shine on. The so-called knowing yourself became almost impossible. It became an unfathomable philosophical proposition. However, the spirit turtle did not have such limitations. It was like a huge light bulb. Although the range of its illumination was also limited, there was only the unknown darkness. There was no fake reality. Furthermore, it could reflect on itself at any time and place. It was clear and bright. It was not the so-called high intelligence, nor was it like a supercomputer that could perform a tremendous amount of calculation and analysis in a short period of time. Instead, it was a completely different cognitive method. It was simultaneous, without any order. It was a systematic and comprehensive understanding of the problem. In the instant he saw the apple fall to the ground, there was no need to convert it into complicated words or numbers. He could directly construct the structure of the model of gravity in his sea of consciousness. At the same time, it included the meaning to himself. When Li Qingshan saw through his entire self, he could see through his entire sea of memories. All the details were vivid in his mind: desire, destruction, fear, weakness, the reason behind every emotion, the motivation behind every decision. He knew everything. With such a foundation, there was no need for any prophecy. A simple conclusion can be drawn. If I returned from hell, I would definitely judge him. If I judged him to be a traitor, I would destroy him at all costs, just like how I fought against the incarnation of the demonic god Bayan, even if I had to die together with him. There was no room for compromise. Only self-betrayal was intolerable, and I might have the ability to destroy him. Losing the yang spirit was a loss for him. It was equivalent to losing a kind of change, and his overall strength had declined. He was one step away from the sixth heavenly tribulation. But for me, it was the exact opposite. I had broken free from the shackles of the fiend god's body. As an ordinary human cultivator, I was only one step away from the sixth heavenly tribulation. Once he passed the tribulation, he would be a human immortal. Moreover, he would be a human immortal who knew all of his secrets and would possess the same tenacious will to fight as him. At that time, no one would be able to help him. He had to face the battle alone. At this point, he had no choice but to admit that he was indeed a monster that was different from ordinary people. He possessed a strong instinct for self-destruction. But what of it? He would not cater to anyone, even if that person was him. The victor is powerful, and the victor is strong. Defeating oneself and destroying oneself was the destiny of the strong. If they really deviated from each other, if they walked different paths, there would only be a battle. He would use survival and destruction to make a judgment to see whose path was more correct. Yes, only self-betrayal could not be tolerated. He made his decision calmly and indifferently and threw the matter to the back of his mind. This was not the reason he knew himself in the first place. The premise of everything was that he could leave the ruin's end. Otherwise, there was no need to mention anything. He glowed. The rings gradually dimmed. This kind of thinking consumed a lot of energy, and he felt more and more sleepy. The ruin's end was different from the void. Not only would the power not dissipate, but it could also easily absorb the endless power of the ruin's end. It was enough to support him in the ruins end forever. However, the power of the ruins end was not a pure resource. It contained a lot of information. The will of the primordial spirit turtle would accelerate the assimilation of his will. Once the assimilation began, it was irreversible. After a certain point, he would still fall into a deep sleep, and it would be the result of his own choice. He was in a dilemma. But when he knew himself, he had already found a solution. Or in other words, that was where his true goal lay. During the 20-odd years he spent in secluded cultivation, he comprehended another 2 innate abilities of the spirit turtle transformation. One of them was called absolute will. There was nothing special about it. It could only completely solidify his consciousness, preventing all inner demons from interfering with him. If the spirit turtle's profound shell's final radiance protected his body, then absolute will protected his mind. As expected, he carried out the 4 words, "cowardly turtle," to the very end. Unfortunately, this ability was completely useless in the ruins end, as this was the homeland of the spirit turtle. The will of the primordial spirit turtle was the true, absolute will. Even pure-blooded spirit turtles had to accept assimilation. As a fake spirit turtle, using the innate ability of the spirit turtle carelessly would instead accelerate the assimilation. In short, no matter what he did, assimilation was unavoidable. Like dripping water wearing through a rock, it changed everything bit by bit. As a result, he did not limit himself to that. Instead, he studied the innate ability of the spirit turtle from all angles and found a solution. First, he created a mirror clone with Water Mirror's image. Then he began to fully understand himself, backing up all of his memories and information. He solidified them with absolute will and stored them in the mirror clone. This made him seem like his soul had left his body. The figure of a spirit turtle was attached to him, following him around. Afterwards, he began absorbing the power of Ruin's End, recovering his strength while accepting assimilation. Once the main body was about to fall into a deep sleep, he would immediately activate the mirror avatar and merge with the main body. He would awaken his spirit with absolute will and use his lifetime of memories to reweave his consciousness and create a new mirror avatar. As long as he constantly repeated this process, he could avoid being assimilated and return to his starting point constantly. Although in reality, it was equivalent to being assimilated countless times. Compared to the mirror clone's absolute will, all of his main body's changes became so-called inner demons. They would be suppressed and shattered after colliding with each other, and then they would begin anew. This was the only way he could think of to avoid being assimilated by Ruin's End. Of course, this cycle could not continue forever. From the beginning of the first cycle, he had already expected this. Every time he suppressed the inner demons, a portion of his memory would be lost in the collision. Furthermore, it would be completely destroyed, unable to be backed up or retrieved, forever lost. Depending on the depth of the memory, the most insignificant memories would be the first. Perhaps it was a third-rate novel he had read, or perhaps it was a joke he had told. In the past 20 years in heaven, he had accumulated enough memories to use as a sacrifice. However, if this continued, his memories would become less and less, and he would gradually touch the most core and important memories. He had to find that prisoner of Ruin's End before he lost all of his memories and destroyed them. Otherwise, he would forget everything, including Brother Ox, Little, and himself. P.S. Chapter 1547. In the boundless darkness, time became blurry. It seemed like a long time had passed, but it also seemed like only a moment had passed. However, he clearly remembered that the mirror image had merged with his real body at the 23rd time. He felt a sharp pain in his brain. Once again, he returned to his original state, and all the wrong thoughts were corrected. Not forgetting the original intention turned out to be such a headache. The pain came and went quickly. He vaguely heard the sound of memory shattering. It was as clear as thin ice, and the fragments melted in the black water. But he didn't know what he had forgotten. It was probably something not very important, but he couldn't help but tremble. Through his self-awareness, he understood one thing. Nothing was absolutely unimportant. Important things were always made up of a lot of unimportant things. Behind heroic epics, there were always ups and downs. Like a colorful picture, thick ink eroded from the surroundings. If this went on, how long could those so-called important things last? In the void, he didn't lose power, but here, he was losing himself. He felt a kind of strange black humor. Once he lost most of his memories, the young spirit in hell was closer to the original meaning of the name Li Qingshan. If he were to ask, who was the real Li Qingshan? The answer was very simple. Whoever was stronger was Li Qingshan. This was the world of cultivation. The collision of strength and the battle of wills was endless. The weak didn't deserve to bear this name, and the weak didn't deserve anything. He had been cruising in the ultimate for a long time, but he still didn't see anything, whether it was a ray of light or a speck of dust. There was only endless black water. But in his mind, there was a clear map. With the position of entering the ultimate as the origin, he kept cruising around, and the trajectory of the navigation was like a whirlpool that continued to expand. At the same time, he was still constantly releasing light and using mystic light illuminates all to survey the surrounding thousands of miles, so this circle was very big. But in the boundless ultimate, he was still like a lost firefly. It was wasting light in vain. However, this light was not only light, but also contained a message. Where the light was swallowed by the darkness, it continued to spread further with the deep black water as a medium. The second new magical power of spirit turtle transformation. This was a method of long-distance communication. He could communicate telepathically from a super long distance away, allowing him to spy on them with mystic light illumination while giving orders at the same time. Under normal circumstances, it did not seem to be of much use, but now it could be used as a signal tower. He kept sending out signals, hoping that the sinkhole prisoner would receive them. Because a message that was too complicated could easily be lost, in order to ensure that the signal could travel far enough, the message only had 3 words. Who am I? Not only was the signal simplified to the extreme, but questions were also more likely to attract attention. If there was a potential enemy, it wouldn't expose his purpose. It would be treated as an ordinary spirit turtle that had sunk into deep thought. Perhaps he was constantly reminding himself. Everything was going according to plan. It was meticulous like a tortoise, but it was still a stupid method. The future was bleak. Perhaps he would get a response in the next moment, or perhaps he would never get a response. In the end, like a frog in warm water, it was gradually cooked. That's right, frogs weren't actually that stupid. As the spirit tortoise, perhaps the smartest species in the world, he was unable to escape this fate. Thus, he began to spin endlessly in the endless black water. The 108th time his mirror image overlapped with his main body. After the habitual pain, another part of his memory was lost. The 108th time his mirror image overlapped with his main body. He could not remember a single book of the mountains and seas of books in the sky, including the unfettered tome. That was the only title left. How long had it been? A year and a half? Or 8 to 10 years? He couldn't remember anymore? It was easy to calculate. The time of every overlap was basically the same, but now he had even forgotten about this. Moreover, he would forget it every time he tried to recollect it. This was because memorizing such information was completely meaningless. Instead, it would weaken his willpower. Time became a blurry concept. The 3528th time was not like he was spinning. Instead, the entire sinkhole was spinning. The deathly stillness was just an illusion. In reality, it was a huge whirlpool that was spinning at an extremely high speed. But just like how humans could not feel the rotation of the Earth, this whirlpool was too big. Moreover, his body maintained the same speed as the whirlpool, so he did not feel that he was moving on his own. He thought he was advancing along a precise trajectory, but in reality he was constantly approaching the center of the whirlpool. Of course, he was not certain whether this was real or just an illusion. With the loss of a large number of memories, everything became unclear. Who am I for the 7759th time? He slowly closed his eyes. He had reached the 9th layer of the spirit turtle transformation. Everything was over. He had already sacrificed his name, but there was still no response. Before despair could even surge out, it began to recede rapidly. He was as calm as he could be, and as tired as he could be. With his final bit of willpower, he sent out a final message and fell into an eternal slumber. Who am I? Suddenly, a voice barged into his sea of consciousness. It was like a landslide, like thunder, like the roar of a million lions, rousing him from his slumber. He could not help but shrink back into his turtle shell. The voice continued to reverberate violently. Even the turtle shell trembled as if it had become some kind of musical instrument. Li Qingshan widened his eyes. Ecstasy surged through his heart. Although he had almost forgotten why he was ecstatic, he still felt happy. Have I found it? The silent, black waters surged violently, forming countless whirlpools and streams. Every single whirlpool and stream was hundreds or thousands of times larger than him. Even a demon emperor would be torn to pieces easily. However, he was fearless. With the complete completion of the spirit turtle transformation, he had already become a pure-blooded spirit turtle. Using every whirlpool as a marker and every stream as a path, he sped up into the depths of Ruin's End. Suddenly, a lofty, rising and falling shadow appeared before him. It was like a huge, crouching beast, coming from the endless darkness and going into the endless darkness. Who knew how many thousand kilometers it was? It's a mountain. He had never thought there would be a day when he would be so surprised and so close to a mountain. Not only was this Ruin's End, but he had also lost all of his memories regarding mountains, including his own name. This was equivalent to the first mountain he had ever seen in his life. He approached it slowly. The tremendous sound originated from this mountain. The jagged, strange rocks and towering rocks were already inches away, but he did not discover anything else. Apart from mountains, there were only rocks. He used the profound light illuminates all and scanned the entire mountain range carefully. He discovered a few words seemed to be engraved on the most majestic mountain among the mountains. He approached it and took a look. As it turned out, it was 3 huge words that spanned several thousand meters. The name seemed rather familiar, but he could not recall where he had heard it before. He still could not find anything alive, so he asked loudly, "Where are you?" A voice 1,000,000 times louder than his own replied, "I'm beneath your feet." Rumble. The black waters surged and rose and fell, producing countless ocean currents. Li Qingshan powered the spirit turtle's profound shell and barely blocked the sound waves. He gazed at the mountains and came up with an idea. You're crushed beneath the mountain? He found this setting to be very familiar. He could not help but look around. Should there be some kind of golden sticker or something in the surroundings that he needed to remove so that he could continue westward and reach the peak of his life? The voice laughed aloud instead, shaking the mountains. It replied with a question, "How am I crushed?" Li Qingshan was taken aback. This was Ruin's End. Even this mountain should be floating in the black water, so it should not be crushed. Then you're sealed in the center of the mountain? You're on my back. Surely not. Li Qingshan was taken aback. He pushed the profound light illuminates all to the limit and tried to view the mountain range that stretched for several thousand kilometers as a single entity. Only then did he discover that it was like a crouching lion, and the mountain he stood on was the lion's towering back. He had achieved the major accomplishment of the spirit turtle transformation, so he was already relatively large, but he seemed like a flea on the lion's back. Rumble. The lion raised its head, causing the mountains to rise and fall. It let out a huge yawn, its 2 long teeth like 2 inverted peaks. It turned around and looked at him. Its brownish-yellow eyes were like 2 scorching suns, immediately dispelling the endless darkness. "Little guy, who are you?" "I'm not some little guy. Can you keep your voice down?" Li Qingshan knew what he was facing, but he did not feel any fear. Instead, he felt a great sense of familiarity. "I can't, little guy." The lion rejected him without any hesitation. The corner of Li Qingshan's mouth twitched. This bastard lion. Clearly, it had no awareness of being a prisoner. The lion twitched its ears. "Pay attention to your thoughts. I can hear you. And who are you?" Li Qingshan vaguely guessed the lion's identity. He still managed to retain this information. I forgot, the lion announced proudly. But Big Brother once called me a stupid lion, so you can just call me foolish old man. Li Qingshan rolled his eyes. What was there to be proud of about being called a stupid lion? Or maybe the one to be proud of was that Big Brother. There was no need for him to explain anything. This person should have seen everything from him. But why did he find the word foolish old man a little familiar? Forget it. If I'm not wrong, you are the great saint of moving mountains, Lion Camel King. Lion Camel King glanced at the 3 words Lion Camel Ridge. Yes, this is it. Chapter 1548. The Lion Camel King continued, but little guy, you still have to call me Yugong. This is an order. Li Qingshan hated the word order, so he nodded. Okay, Lion Camel King. Yes, Lion Camel King. No problem, Lion Camel King. Yes, Lion Camel King. Lion King. Yugong. The silent and boundless black water suddenly became noisy. The big lion and the little turtle stared at each other, one majestic and awe-inspiring, his aura covering the mountains. The other was expressionless and unmoved. The lion did not fly into a rage and kill the turtle. Instead, he insisted on correcting the turtle's title. After many arguments, he suddenly laughed. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. His voice was like a landslide of thunder, but it was filled with joy. Perhaps he had been lonely for too long in this blackwater prison. Li Qingshan squinted his eyes. Hey, don't you think this is childish? You are the one who is childish. Little guy. The Lion Camel King said word by word. His eyes were as bright as the sun as he stared at Li Qingshan. You are carrying the blood oath of Styx. You don't have much time left. He lowered his mountain-like head. If you want to compete with me. He smiled proudly. Thou shalt lose. Li Qingshan sighed. The difference in their abilities was like heaven and earth. He was not surprised that the lion could see through this. But it was true that the river Styx was getting closer and closer. He did not have much time left. Then, stupid Mr. Lion, how can I get you out? He looked around, still trying to find something that looked like gold. He had a feeling that there should be something. The Lion Camel King laughed again. Little guy, you really know how to joke? Bastard, I'm leaving. Don't underestimate yourself. You are too weak. Of course you don't have this kind of power. You're still too young. If you want to break the ultimate, you can only ask for my beloved second sister's help. The Lion Camel King looked up and said in a respectful tone. Li Qingshan was shocked. Second sister? The great sage of the ocean cover, the Dragon Demon King. That's right. She is also your beloved second sister. Li Qingshan felt a bit mushy. I don't know her. You are the one chosen by Big Brother. Of course you are our brother. The Lion Camel King extended a claw. He lightly knocked on Li Qingshan's turtle shell. Li Qingshan tried his best to resist this intimate gesture. He shook his head helplessly. It's my honor. Then should I call you fourth brother? No, call me Yugong. Alright. Li Qingshan completely gave up. Then where is second sister? I don't know. Then stay here obediently. But my dear fifth brother must know that he has a very good ear. You know everything. The Lion Camel King shook his 2 small mountain-like ears, expressing his approval. Great sage ventilation, raging monkey king. Li Qingshan suddenly understood why Brother Ox had arranged for that ox head Pang to bring him to the depths of hell. Judging from the current situation, all the great sages were being suppressed. If he wanted to release them, he had to at least know where they were. The Raging Monkey King was the most important part. It all depended on whether his yang spirit was strong enough to reach the depths of hell and meet the great sage ventilation. If his yang spirit failed, he would have to go to hell again. But before that, he had to solve the blood oath of the Styx River. So he told the demon god Qiongqi about the bet. The bet was not about defeating Qiongqi, but pushing down his Qingqi mountain. He believed that the great sage moving mountain would definitely have a way. The Lion Camel King did not disappoint him. That's easy. He opened his abyss-like mouth and spat out a palm-sized token. It landed in front of Li Qingshan. This is? The token was simple and crude, with a simple U character carved deeply on it. There was no aura coming from it. It looked like it was carved from an ordinary rock. Mountain moving token. This is my natal item. With this token in your hand, moving mountains and filling seas will be a piece of cake. Li Qingshan accepted the mountain moving token carefully. It was crucial for him to defeat Qiongqi. The Lion Camel King continued, your cultivation is too weak. You probably can't unleash much of its power. I'll give you another 3 mountains in case of emergencies. He shook his body. 3 mountains immediately flew up from his back, landing in front of Li Qingshan. They had all shrunk to the size of a fist, just like 3 fake mountains. However, they were exactly the same as the original mountains in detail. Li Qingshan asked, what are the names of these mountains? Wolf Fang Mountain, Skyscraper Ridge, Yellow Cliff Peak. Li Qingshan grabbed the Wolf Fang Mountain and tried to lift it, but it did not budge at all. Who knew how many tens of millions of tons it weighed? Let alone the spirit turtle transformation, even the ox demon transformation could not lift such a weight. The Lion Camel King smiled. You're not the big brother. How can you use brute force? Li Qingshan thought of something. He waved the mountain-moving tablet gently, and the 3 mountains immediately took off, as light as 3 birds. The Lion Camel King reminded, you can only use these 3 mountains once. You won't be able to change them back after using them. That's enough. Li Qingshan nodded. He was only borrowing the Lion Camel King's power, but he already felt like this trip was worth it. Not only did he have an arcane treasure to deal with Qiongqi, but he also had such a powerful technique. The 3 mountains had all been refined by the Lion Camel King. They were not as loose and inconvenient as regular mountains. Instead, they were almost like arcane treasures. They were solid and could be used freely. Even a human immortal would be smashed to smithereens by just 1 hit from it. However, as far as the eye could see, the 3 mountains were only the smallest on the Lion Camel King's back. Coupled with the fact that he was almost a mountain himself, the mountain-moving sage lived up to his name. All of this was probably in preparation for the divine war beyond the 9 heavens. It was not something he could do right now. However, he had a feeling that this day would not be too far away. This was the prophecy of a pure-blooded spirit turtle. One day, he would have his own power and become a true great sage. What should I be called? Invincible great sage? Never mind, I'll go back and discuss it with Little and... Thinking of Little and he wanted to go home. Though Little and had forgotten who he was, she would definitely remember. Before he left, he asked, oh right, who am I? The Lion Camel King's face darkened. You are the 7th. If I remember correctly, the 7th should be equal to the heavens. Shut up. The Lion Camel King was enraged. Do not mention that traitor's name. The lion roared, the mountains howled, the endless black water churned, and the entire returning ruins was shaken. Li Qingshan was swept up by the black water and slammed into a mountain. The mountain crumbled. It was as if he was facing a terrifying natural disaster. He shouted, calm down, calm down. The Lion Camel King retracted his thunderous rage, but he was still angry. He gritted his sharp teeth and shouted, traitor, traitor. Li Qingshan had mixed feelings. What is going on? Don't ask, I don't want to talk about it. The Lion Camel King suddenly lost interest. He turned his head back and laid lazily on his paws. His ears also drooped down. Li Qingshan was deep in thought and didn't say anything else. He was a real spirit turtle now. Entering and exiting the returning ruins was no longer difficult. A whirlpool appeared in the black water, and just as he was about to enter it, the Lion Camel King said tiredly, never mind, you are the 8th. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.